The Ferrari pair have been going exceptionally well in testing this winter and are sure to mount a formidable challenge for the title. Number 3 this year is worn by the Japanese driver Satoru Nakajima, who has transferred to the Tyrrell team from Lotus. He is partnered by the promising young French star Jean Alesi, who carries number 4. Watch out for the new blue and white livery of the Tyrrell team. This year the Tyrrells will again be powered by the Cosworth V8 engine, but they have made the switch from Goodyear tyres to Pirelli rubber. Retaining the number 5 is Belgian Thierry Boutsen in the Williams Renault. As last year, he teams up with veteran Italian Riccardo Patrese. Williams too has a new look sponsor lineup and will be powered by an updated version of Renault's V10 engine. The number 9 seat is this year taken by Michele Alboreto in the Footwork Arrows, while Alex Capi takes number 10. The team has recently been bought by the Japanese company Footwork. They have signed a contract to use the new Porsche V12 engine from 1991, but for this year will continue with the venerable Cosworth V8. Team Lotus will be powered this season by the Lamborghini V12. They also have an all-British driver lineup with number 11 Derek Warwick and at number 12 the young Ulsterman Martin Donnelly. Frenchman Oliver Griard has moved from Ligier to Osella, who this year will run just a one-car team. Powered by the Cosworth V8, the team will use Pirelli tyres. Leighton House March had a very disappointing season last year, but they have retained the same driver lineup of Mauricio Gugelmin and Ivan Capelli. They will use the development of last year's Judd V8 and again sport the now familiar turquoise colour scheme. AGS have retained Gabriele Tarquini and Yannick Dalmas, as well as Cosworth V8 power, and they have also had a major management shake-up. Benetton could be the surprise team of the season. Alessandro Nannini remains and is joined by Brazilian Nelson Piquet, a 3-time world champion. A new Ford V8 engine will supply the power, and the addition of John Barnard to the design team will strengthen the lineup and mark them as one of the big 4 teams. Dallara has signed Italian Emanuele Pirro and have retained the services of Andrea De Cesare. They will run Cosworth V8 power and Pirelli tyres. Last year's surprise team were Minardi. They look to build on that success with drivers Pierluigi Martini and a newcomer to Formula 1, Casper Air, Paolo Barilla. At Ligier, Nicola Lorini has joined from Osella and Philippe Alliot returns to the team after a 4-year absence. Another of the Cosworth V8 runners, but this time on Goodyear tyres. McLaren Honda are once again favourites for the title. Brazilian Ayrton Senna will this year carry the number 27, made famous by the late great Gilles Villeneuve. He is joined by the Austrian Gerhard Berger, who moves from Ferrari to McLaren. Only time will tell if these two can work together and produce a more harmonious atmosphere at the Woking-based team. It's been a turbulent off-season, with Ayrton Senna at loggerheads with the sport's governing body, FISA. That battle now seems to have been resolved, and Ayrton must concentrate on what he does best, driving. This year's car is a development of last and is again powered by the mighty Honda V10. Goodyear provides the rubber. The Larousse Lola team have signed Frenchman Eric Bernard, he's very promising indeed, and the Japanese Aguri Suzuki. They will again have Lamborghini power and will be hoping that last year's reliability problems can be solved. The little Coloni outfit will run just one car this year. Belgian Bertrand Gachot, who describes himself as a European, has transferred from Onyx. And the Japanese car manufacturer Subaru have taken an interest in the team. Eurobrun have signed former Coloni driver Roberto Moreno, and he is partnered by the little-known Italian Claudio Langis. The Judd V8 engine provides the power, but a V12 Neotech engine is in the pipeline. Onyx have the young Finn, JJ Leto, who debuted for the team late last season and looked particularly impressive. Alongside him, the experienced Swede Stefan Johansson retains his seat. The team has had a troubled off-season, narrowly failing in its bid for Porsche V12 power. It will now once again be running a Cosworth V8 engine, and the ownership of the team has also changed. Finally, a newcomer to the Formula 1 scene, Life Racing. The car will be driven by Gary Brabham, son of former world champion Sir Jack. One team missing from that rundown, of course, Brabham. A week ago it appeared that the Brabham team would not be racing this season, certainly in the early season races. We stand here at Phoenix in an empty garage area, but with me, the team director, Mike Blash, with some late news because there has been an 11th hour rescue bid. Tell us, Mike, what's happening?
Well, basically on Monday afternoon, we sorted out all of our problems for our financial future. Very fortunate to be able to say, and very happy to say, that we are in business for the whole of the 19th season, and the future of Brabham is very secure. We cancelled everything on Friday, and needless to say that meant aeroplanes and hotels, hire cars, fuel, motorhome, etc. Monday afternoon, right, put it all back together again, and we managed to get the mechanics flying out on Tuesday in various ways, and then the cars left on a Federal Express aeroplane from Heathrow on Wednesday. The cars have now arrived in Los Angeles. They've just been put onto a truck. We've got a police escort and a 7-hour trip, and they should be here around about 9 o'clock this evening, and tomorrow morning off we go.
There was talk of one of your drivers, Stefano Modena, transferring teams because of the various injuries. What's the situation now with your driver lineup?
Well, Stefano Modena is actually driving 4 Brabhams along with Gregor Wojtek.
What about tyres? Because the Pirelli tyres went to Tyrrell. Are you tireless?
Well, I arrived here this morning being completely tired and tireless. Fortunately, we're still going to remain with Pirelli, and we're looking forward to that relationship again.
You did do a little bit of testing in the winter, but obviously you're behind everybody. Can you get on the grid? It's going to be a massive uphill struggle for all the lads, isn't it?
Yeah, to be very honest, providing we qualify with both cars, I'll be over the moon. And I'm not worried where we qualify, just as long as we qualify 2 cars for the race.
Ayrton, a new season starts with this weigh-in. Are you putting everything of last year behind you?
Well, that's a good start with the interview. I think 1990 is 1990, and we are here Phoenix, and we are here for racing, and that's what should take place. We have a long season, very competitive, more than before, and I think it's going to be exciting for everybody and difficult for everybody that is looking for winning.
Do you prefer it a season where we've got some really strong teams, or would you like to just walk the championship?
I think competition is good for the sport and is good for Formula One. Not always good for the driver that is there fighting, but I think makes each victory more tasteful. Therefore, through the difficulties you get the pleasure.
If you didn't love motor racing, you wouldn't be back after all the nonsense that went on over the winter, would you?
Yes, I think you could say that. I have been through a difficult time, but here we are, and let's see what takes place now.
In the press conference this morning, somebody asked you if you carried any grudges, and you just said silence.
Same to you now.
Move on to the race in Brazil. Your hometown, but you've never raced at Interlagos, have you?
No, I only race go-karts in Brazil, and as a natural thing I never raced Interlagos. I only started racing Brazil with Formula One in '84, and we were already in Rio, so it's going to be my first race at home. Let's see.
I went to several races at the old Interlagos track, which is a marvellous track. What about the new one? Because you were there just a few days ago.
The new one is completely new one, as you say. All facilities, not only the circuit, and I think it's going to give a good show to everybody. It's going to be enjoyable to drive too. The layout is very nice, up and down, fast, slow corners, and the facilities for the teams to work, the press, everything is marvelous, and we should have a fantastic weekend there.
Ken, we're here at the weigh-in, but this isn't a boxing match. What's going on?
Well, one of the rules of Formula One is that the cars must not be less than a certain weight. And the most convenient way to weigh the cars is when they enter the pits, when they're trying to qualify for the starting grid. And so we weigh the drivers at the start of the season, and again halfway through the season in case they put on or lose weight, and then that weight is subtracted from the weight of the car.
That's a clever way of doing it.
It's a simple way of doing it.
And who's the heaviest, you think, out there?
I don't know. I think one of my boys is the lightest. Satoru Nakajima. I think he will come out pretty well the lightest this year.
Do you think that makes any difference, Ken, to a racing car? Nigel Mansell was talking about it this morning, and the difference between him and Prost.
Yes. Oh, yes, it most definitely makes a difference. A pound of weight is worth 100th of a second per lap on
Nigel, I think you're really looking forward to the new season with Ferrari.
Yeah, it's a fantastic start of the new year. We've done a lot of homework over the winter and, you know, put an extraordinary amount of time and effort into it. So we look for the new year with great expectations.
Of course, you've done some sensational times in testing, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, it is incredible, actually. I mean, we've lowered some of the outright track records by about 3 seconds. And, you know, in the winter you expect maybe 1 second or so, but 3 seconds is quite extraordinary.
But that is taking its toll on your body and all the drivers' bodies.
I think as the season goes on this year, I think we're getting back to the development of ground effect without having it, because the lift-over drag is such now that we're getting the downforce without the drag, so we're going faster down the straights, which we're proving, and of course a lot faster around the corners.
What's that actually do for your body? It almost sucks the air out, does it?
Well, I think the problem is the lateral G-load. We're certainly getting over 4G lateral G-load now in some corners, in Estoril especially. And then as John knows from the ground effect days, I mean, you go into some corners and hold your breath. You can't breathe when you're pulling about 4G lateral.
How's that going to be round here with the bumps of Phoenix?
Won't be a problem around here at all, because I mean, you know, they're short, snappy corners, and therefore you won't really pull much G. You'll probably pull 2G, 2.5 at the most. But going down into Brazil, you'll be pulling a lot of G down there.
We've been working with Alan Prost over the winter period, and that relationship really seems to be blossoming.
Yeah, Alan's a very professional man, and you know, he saw that I made it possible for him to come to the Ferrari team, and I think he appreciated that. And we've worked very well together, and I think the team's moved forward just a little bit faster on the engine front if he hadn't have been with us. So yeah, it's very, very good.
Number one for motorsport. John Watson and I are standing here on pole position at Phoenix. John, what about street racing and this Phoenix track in particular?
Well, like all street tracks in North America, they are road tracks that have 90-degree corners. There's no natural flow of road, such as Monte Carlo, where the circuit there follows the natural contours of the road. Here it's long straights, short straights, 90-degree corners, and really what is most difficult is there's no recognition points in the circuit, no reference points. So you rush down a straight like this, you can see 300 yards, 200 yards, 100 yards, and those are the markers before the corner, but you cannot actually see the corner. All you see is a small gap at the point where you really ought to be turning in, and it's very, very difficult just to know, particularly in the early part of the practice, where the road goes. And it also causes a lot of problems during the race anyway, because people do make misjudgments. They try to pass down the inside. Even though we've got a lovely wide street here, effectively only about half of the circuit was actually usable. The other half is going to be dirty, rubber, so it's almost impossible to pass somebody even though you've got a wide part of the street.
One of the other problems, John, I think, is the fact that a street circuit has all the fundamental parts of a normal road. It does. I mean, right, look down here. This is a metal plate. This is actually something to do with the water system of Phoenix, and that's actually been, you see, welded down, but that must sort of unnerve a motor car. Well, do you have to look for those things, and what do you do about it?
Well, certainly at Phoenix, as we saw last year, a lot of the cars, because they're running so low, were bottoming heavily, and they were doing it on this straight. These kind of hazards are something that you've got to put up with. If you can see them, or maybe more to the point, if you know where they are, you do try to avoid them. But it's one of the hazards, if you like, of racing on street tracks, and particularly American street tracks, because their roads are generally not as good in the city, in the inner city, as we are here in Phoenix, let's say as Monte Carlo. So you've got to live with it. It means it's going to be an uncomfortable and bumpy ride. The bottom of the car is going to take a hammering. Hopefully the welding and these manhole covers will stay intact and one of those doesn't pop out. So it's not what I would consider an ideal racetrack from the surface point of view, but it's a Grand Prix, it's in America, and that I can assure you is very, very important to Formula One Grand Prix racing.
The first thing to hit the track this morning at an early hour, 8 o'clock in the morning, a pre-qualifying session, 9 cars pre-qualifying, and only 4 to go through to the rest of the practice. The rest of the cars, the other 5, that's the end of their Phoenix Grand Prix, and let's just look at who got through. Fastest in that pre-qualifying session, Roberto Moreno, very happy having switched teams to Eurobrun with a 1 minute 32.292. Second fastest in the Lola Lamborghini, the promising young Frenchman Eric Bernard in a 1 minute 32.711. Another Frenchman in third slot, Oliver Griard, now with the Italian Olsella team, 1 minute 33.181. Fourth fastest, and the last man to get in, the Japanese driver. He switched from the Zach Speed team, there no more, Aguri Suzuki. He did a 1 minute 33.331. The rest of the unhappy brigade who didn't make it. The 2 AGSs were new and expensive sponsorship from the Ted Lapidus firm. Gabriele Tarquini and Yannick Dalmas failed to make the cut by over 2 seconds. Seventh fastest, the Italian, the man from Brescia, Claudio Langes. Gary Brabham with the Life, with that strange W12 engine. That car didn't go at all well. He only did 4 laps, and Gary didn't even get under 2 minutes. And Bertrand Gachot, he was the unhappiest man of all. He didn't even complete a practice lap with the Subaru-powered Coloni. So that's it. Roberto Moreno, Eric Bernard, Oliver Griard and Aguri Suzuki go through. So qualifying has just started, and the first man out on the track, very significantly, Jean Alesi in the Tyrrell. Tyrrell's now running on Pirelli tyres, and the big news is that in this morning's practice session, the 1.5 session, which 1.5 hour session, which was actually stopped for a couple of occasions with accidents, Jean Alesi topped the whole list, quicker than Senna, quicker than Berger, quicker than Prost. Tyrrells are in very good shape indeed. Fifth fastest is the other Tyrrell of Satoru Nakajima. With me in the commentary position here, looking at this qualifying, John Watson. John, what about this Tyrrell situation? Really a sensational start to this new season, this new decade even of Grand Prix racing. Tyrrell, the team of the 70s, may just be the team of the 90s.
Well, the Tyrrell team has had a complete overhaul. They sent the team in, top and tailed it, and the team has come out with a car that looks much more attractive. They've got some very good people from Ferrari. They've got Pirelli tyres, they've got an associated McLaren sponsorship package, and we think maybe a little bit more than that. And the team with John Alesi as a #1 driver is obviously more than just a force to be reckoned with. In fact, we sat and watched a few minutes ago. Ron Dennis, the boss of McLaren, came down to the Tyrrell team pits and was talking to Ken Tyrrell. Now, normally you'd expect to see Ken Tyrrell walking up and talking to Ron Dennis, but today, the other way around.
Well, here we are seeing Jean Alesi just warming up the tyres on this very first qualifying lap of the 1990 Phoenix Grand Prix. Of course, it's very much cooler here than the first Phoenix Grand Prix last year, which was held in the height of summer. Much more pleasant conditions today, about 70 degrees. And here is the man of the moment, Jean Alesi. His parents are born in Sicily, but he a Frenchman. And just see how close those walls are, John. Very difficult in qualifying, but Alesi has got out first, and that is a good move.
Yes, I think what he's going to try and do is get a time in very, very quickly indeed. And although the team and Alesi are new to the Pirelli qualifiers, they're obviously very, very effective. In fact, on a street track like Phoenix, it's generally believed the Pirelli qualifying tyre is going to be the better tyre, and I think that was the indication, not so much from Alesi, who we knew to be an outstanding young driver, but really from Nakajima in 5th place, Alesi's teammate. So that was, I think, some indication of how good the tyre is. But look at Alesi, he's really getting on with the programme. It's only his first time lap, and he's actually giving the car, well, absolute maximum throttle everywhere he can.
Quite a lot of sparks coming from the front of the car when it bottoms here.
And just did it, kissed the wall, indeed.
Kissed the wall. Mauricio Gugelmin there, been having a pretty unhappy time with the march, and Alesi right out in the dirt, and Alesi is really trying hard.
In fact, Andrew, what he did there was probably lost time, because he's on a quick lap. He wants to get it in as soon as possible. Gugelmin's car was in the way, and he just decided, well, you're in the way, but I'm going to still drive round. He got a little bit wide onto the dust, and well, there again, we've just seen him kiss ever so slightly the wall here at Phoenix, and well, in fact, he's slowing down now. He's decided that that's enough for one lap. I'm not going to achieve a good time, and there we are. Look what's happened. 3 corners. He's lost time. He could have maybe written the car off or damaged the car at best. He's coming into the pits, just as his teammate Satoru Nakajima goes by to complete his first time lap, probably ending up quickest driver on the grid so far.
Would you say then that that's lack of experience from Jean Alesi?
I would have thought, yes, a lack of experience. He was very, very keen indeed to consolidate his pole, or his temporary pole position from the morning, but in fact you could see that he was overdriving the car really, really much too much, and on 3 occasions he could have been in the wall. Prudence finally gave way to what he was doing, and he's to come into the pits and think about it and then maybe go out in a couple of minutes.
Right, well there we see and hear a new sound in the back of the Camel Lotus, the sound of the Lamborghini V12 engine, and that is Derek Warwick having his first drive with the team. He tried to get with the Lotus team on 2 or 3 different occasions over the last 5 years. At last he's driving for them, but early indications are that this package isn't working particularly well round here.
Well, the team have had a lot of problems. They didn't really, first of all, get a lot of pre-season testing with this Lamborghini engine. They did a little bit in Portugal a week or so ago, and they had a big, big problem with the oil tank and the oil system. And the Lamborghini engine is an engine that requires an awful lot of oil. I don't know why, but it seems to. They then came out to Phoenix and had a day's testing at Chrysler's test track close to Phoenix. Thought they'd overcome the problem. They put, in effect, a huge blister on the oil tank to enable the capacity to be increased. But this morning they've had just nothing but trouble, and both Warwick and Donnelly are decidedly long-faced, and in fact I would imagine that this race is really going to be an extended testing session for the Lotus Lamborghini team.
They can get more laps in.
Yes, again because of the temperature conditions, the qualifying tire really isn't working to its full potential, and quite a number of the teams may decide to go with one set of soft race tires and one set of qualifiers. If the qualifier really isn't working properly, then they fall back on the soft race set and they can get more laps in.
The new man on pole position, Jean Alesi, has just clocked to 1 minute 29.408. Jean Alesi is now top of the pile, ahead of Pierluigi Martini, Oliver Griard and Nelson Piquet, and it's changed again. Ayrton Senna now second fastest. Martini drops to third. Gerhard Berger is in 4th spot, but Jean Alesi is fastest with a 1 minute 29.480, 0.6 of a second faster than last year's pole position from Senna, and Martini has gone back. And Martini has retaken pole position with a 1 minute 29.250. So it's all happening here at Phoenix. Now this practice session, 36 minutes old out of 60 minutes, and it keeps changing around, and I wouldn't be at all surprised, John, if we don't have another change.
I think we're going to see quite a few changes before the hour session's finished, and it's going to be interesting to see who finally does top the top of the grid, but it certainly appears to me that the Pirelli tired cars do have an advantage at this stage, and even though the two McLarens are 3rd and 4th, those two guys are going to have to struggle, I think, quite a lot to ensure further top of the grid for the two McLaren cars.
There is Nigel Mansell having an attempt at a quick qualifying lap with the 7-speed Ferrari with a semi-automatic gearbox. That gear change, just a little flap behind the steering wheel, certainly helps with quick changes, and Nigel gets it all sideways on, collects it all up, and Nigel is on a big charge. And what is going to happen to Nigel Mansell on this qualifying lap? John, you were saying to me earlier, you really think that Nigel Mansell is pumped up to do well here?
Well, he certainly was on that lap. He came into the corner and he just pitched the car in. The car had lost all grip, went sideways, and he gathered it up just in time before he could have ended up in the tire wall. But obviously, you know, he's going for a grid time. You can see the way the car is darting around, and he's driving it in a very Nigel Mansell way, and that is 100% commitment.
Nigel Mansell then just past Ayrton Senna. Senna will be pulling back into the pits, but Mansell going for the big lap. He's got a Minardi behind him. That is not a pole sitter, Pierluigi Martini. That is. So that's the end of qualifying here at Phoenix, Arizona, The form book has already been upset. How much of it is to do with the Pirelli qualifying tyres, we're not exactly sure right now. But stay with us tomorrow and find out the final lineup for Sunday's grid. We'll be back tomorrow at 22:30 hours UK time, 23:30 hours European time. From John Watson and myself at Phoenix, Arizona, it's goodbye for now. Starts here. The team, of course, will be using Honda engines next year. A very special welcome to all the people that work for the teams back at base. A lot of people put an amazing amount of man hours into these cars, and while each team has about 30 race mechanics, a lot of teams have as many as 120 other people back at base. And I know that all the Williams members are at their conference centre watching us live on Eurosport. So to the people at Williams, hello there. Sheridan Finn sends his regards.
You know, one thing about all these people sitting back at home and watching, there's an enormous, and poor Martin Donnelly had a problem in practice this morning. His car, the engine was giving trouble, it wouldn't start, and in fact they thought it might have momentarily seized, and it seems they haven't cured that problem because they're not able to start the car on the air starter. The team are pushing it, and I think that might be the end of Martin's race. It's a great shame because he was quickest in the wet time session yesterday afternoon, and now his race looks like it's even over before it began.
If he gets it going, of course, he'll have to start at the back of the grid. He can't take up his original position. Martin Donnelly hoping to start his second ever Grand Prix. Remember, he deputised for Derek Warwick in France last year, driving for Arrows, and this doesn't look good for Martin at all.
No, I think Martin's, if they can get that car started at all, it's going to have to be done from the pit lane, and of course he will join the race after the red light goes to green. But I would have said that the prospect of that car starting and joining the Grand Prix is not looking very good right at this stage.
Those Lamborghini engines, the Lotus team have found out, use an awful lot of oil, or actually need a lot of oil to keep them working well.
Yes, they're an engine that seems to require a large reserve of oil, and they haven't really, Lotus have not really got to terms with the engine, its characteristics, and unfortunately they're having to learn at the very first Grand Prix.
We've seen that weaving a lot before, getting the heat into the tyres. What about tyres, John? Are we going to see any pit stops in this race?
Well, all the Goodyear runners are running on their C compound tyre, and they're anticipating that tyre will be man enough to see the car through the race without a pit stop. The Pirelli runners are all running on their middle compound, and they're anticipating they all can go through, but they're not totally confident. If they have to make a pit stop, they will come in and they will fit their even softer race compound, which of course will give them an advantage, but that may only offset the disadvantage of having to make a pit stop in the first place.
Well, John, just before the start, we'll take a quick commercial break. Stay with us on Eurosport. Okay, well, they're weaving around. No commercial break there. We're bringing one up a little bit later. There's Roberto Moreno. There is the Ferrari. Guri Suzuki going through the field. The two Arrows, Nannini, and we see out of the camera on the car. And in fact, it's lucky we're not going to that break because the race is just about to start. Everyone coming up, taking their positions. Looks as if it's going to be 25 cars, not 26. Cars now, engines revving. Drivers, their hearts beating. I don't think you can stop your pulse rate going up at this moment, John, can you?
No, your pulse rate at this stage is running very high. In fact, at one stage all the drivers had monitors fitted to them, and your heart rate was fluctuating between 150 and 200 beats per minute, and that's pretty high. But once the red light goes to green, that'll drop dramatically, but there'll be peaks and troughs throughout the race. But it's a fairly stressful situation, and everybody really now is looking for those lights to change.
Well, it's going to be a fast run down Jefferson Street. Most of these cars over 600 horsepower. There you see in the inset the lights that'll go to red. Green flag waving in the back. Everyone's in line. The red light. Green. Green is go. Gerhard Berger takes the lead. Oh, that is the fastest away. All those sparks coming up. Cars full of fuel. And indeed, look at that, John, diving through on the inside.
Jean Alesi did what I expected him to do. He's got a lot of grip from his Pirelli tyres, and he is going to lead this race and then stamp his... Oops, and we had a little bit of a shunt. One of the Benettons has lost bodywork. Go to Williams. Oops, and another car behind has lost bodywork also. Yeah, one of the two Williams, I think it was Patrese' car, lost the nose and the front wing, so he'll be in the pit straight away at the end of the first lap.
Yes, it's Alesi first. Second is Gerhard Berger. Fourth, De Cesaris. But third, De Cesaris. Fourth, it's Ayrton Senna. Senna already made up 2 places. Alessi, a fantastic start from the Frenchman, from Avignon. Already the Minardi has dropped back to 5th position. Can't see any obvious signs of that carbon fibre bodywork flying, but it's... well, we're going to see the start now from the camera car. Well,
there you go. Ricciardo's nose, front wings, the whole lot. In fact, it landed on top of his head. So that's what we saw, I think, bouncing in the middle of the track, and another car behind did hit it. But look at Alessi. He's probably pulled out the best part of a second. We're still not yet at the end of 1 lap.
Alessi, Berger, De Cesaris, Senna charging hard. Then Martini. Prost down in about 10th position. End of lap number 1. Joe Alessi leads his first ever Grand Prix. Throws away a tear strip. Only the 9th Grand Prix of his career. Clouds of sparks as they hurtle down Jefferson Street. There's Andrea De Cesaris. Had a shunted morning warm-up, but no problem with that car.
And Patrese has just come into the pits. The Williams mechanics have put a stand under the front of the car. They have to have a look and see if there's any other damage, because the bodywork is attached to the chassis, and maybe the chassis mounts themselves are damaged. This is what those Williams folk back in Didcot are not wanting to see.
The lineup at the end of the first lap: Alessi, Berger, De Cesaris, Senna, Martini, Piquet, Boutsen, Modena, Prost, Briard, Nakajima, Bernard, Barilla, Laurini, Suzuki, Mansell, Alboreto, Warwick, Moreno. Work still going on here in the Williams pit, and work too. Bernd Schneider in the Arrows pit, putting on new tyres as well, John.
Well, I think so. I think he probably was the car that ran into the nose from Patrese's Williams, so he's had to come in and make a quick pit stop. He may have locked up the brakes and, of course, flat spotted one of his tyres, so that was a pit stop that was necessary for him to just check the car out. But look at Alessi going. He is absolutely driving to the limit, and the benefit he has right now is a tyre that works more efficiently in the low temperatures that we've got today. But of course, McLaren, they're on Goodyear tyres. They need maybe 2 or 3 laps for their race tyres to come up to operating temperature. And I imagine that within the next number of laps we will see Berger and Senna making progress. But Senna's got to get past Andrea De Cesaris, and that is not going to be an easy operation.
Schneider back on the racetrack and getting in the way of the front runners there. Well, there's the Roman, Andrea De Cesaris, very close to the walls in the Dallara. The other Dallara did not make the start. Gianni Morbidelli, the Formula 3 champion, crashing in Friday's practice session, and because it was wet on Saturday, had no chance to make the grid.
Just watching Riccardo Patrese, of course, he's now a lap down. He's just rejoined the race, and he's in the middle of the front bunch. He's got Pierluigi Martini just behind him. Yes. So he's going to have to be careful and to let all these other cars that are in the train directly behind Martini, they'll be looking to get through.
Yes, recap on the order after lap 2. Joe Alessi first, Gerhard Berger is second, De Cesaris is third, Senna is fourth, Martini is fifth, Piquet is sixth, Boutsen 7th, Modena 8th, 9th is Alain Prost, 10th Nakajima, Nigel Mansell, he's down in about 17th position. Alessi's first flying lap, a 1 minute 32.845 lap. The lap record stands at about 1 minute 30, but that is sure to be shattered. In fact, the lap record 1:33.969, so it's been shattered on the first flying lap. Lap 3, Alessi, Berger, De Cesaris, Senna, Martini, Piquet. Showers of sparks into the face of Thierry Boutsen. Boutsen having a little look down the inside.
Yes, he ran down. He was trying to have a little look down the inside of Nelson Piquet, but you may have seen his right hand come up to his helmet, and I think what he was doing was peeling off one of the rip-offs he has on his helmet. So there may be either some oil or oil vapor coming out of one of the cars directly ahead of him, and he may be bothered with a little bit of misting on the visor. So Boutsen already having to start to trip off those rip-offs. Normally a driver will carry 2 in a race of this nature, in a street race where the cars do tend to run together, run very closely together. And already one of the Ferraris Looks like Prost's car is blowing out some oil smoke. Just coming around the corner, we saw a little haze of oil, blue oil smoke. So maybe Alan Prost's race isn't going to be quite as long as he was anticipating.
There's Thierry Boutsen. Boutsen running in 6th spot.
And he's in 6th gear now, reaching about 165, 170 miles an hour. And Prost having a dive down the inside of Modena, and he has made it. But he struggled to do that. Modena, he had a go at on the lap before, and he didn't quite make it. This time he did get through, but it was a sort of touch-and-go effort. Modena wasn't terribly keen to concede the corner, but he finally had to, and Prost has now moved up one place.
It's on a street circuit like this, so easy to tangle those walls. You make a mistake of 3 or 4 inches, it means serious damage, whereas on a normal racing circuit, you get away with it, John.
Well, you have, but to see how wide the road is, well, that road width, in fact, is effectively only about 3 lanes wide. If you go any wider and try and pass somebody down the inside, you're going to get on to the part of the racetrack that is effectively very dirty. Nicola Larini, having stopped, spun or something, rejoining the race in the sole Ligier in this race.
Lap number 4, Jean Alesi leads by 4 seconds from Gerhard Berger. Senna is 2.5 seconds behind Berger. Then De Cesaris, followed by Martini, Piquet, Boutsen, Prost, Modena, Nakajima, Bernard, Gruard, Barilla, Mansell, Suzuki, Alboreto, Wojtek and Warwick.
Roberto Moreno just rejoining the pits, rejoining the race, having been in the pits. Down in 23rd spot. He'll be lower than that by the time he comes round at the end of this lap.
And from those Irish fans, it appears that Martin Donnelly was not able to make the start. Martin Donnelly is not out on the racetrack.
And Nicola Larini also rejoining the racetrack. We don't know what his problem was. We saw him recovering from a spin on the circuit. He may have had a quick pit stop to check the tyres again for flat spots or damage to the car. He may have just have caressed, let's say, the wall during that spin. Boutsen still looking for a way around Nelson Piquet and not really getting into a position to seriously challenge him. But one of the benefits of racing on a track like this is that all the corners being right-angle corners, they do encourage overtaking because the braking zones are very clearly defined. Oh, and Larini has stopped and out of the race.
He's not a happy man, is he?
That looks very... He's only just joined the race, having done less than half a lap. Suddenly he's out of the car, walking away.
Yes, in fact, we saw him take a quick visit to the pit road. Well, an Italian gesture there. They're on the 6th lap now, after 5 laps. The gap between Alesi and Berger, 4.335 seconds. Senna still 2.5 seconds behind Berger. A yellow flag's waving, what's that all about?
There we are, Larini's Ligier.
There's Alan Prost.
See the smoke? There's something breathing. Now, the Ferrari did this a lot last year, in fact, in Jerez. Berger's car was doing this throughout the race, and we anticipated the car stopping, retiring. It finished the race. Whether Alan Prost will be in for the same kind of ride today, it's very, very early in the race to say, but that's not a healthy sign from any car at this point in the race.
Well, this battle for 4th through about 7th place is certainly the excitement of the race so far. Jean Alesi pulling out a little bit in the Tyrrell, using that venerable Ford engine which was designed something like 23 years ago. Of course, when it was designed originally it had 420 horsepower, and this year, John, they've hiked the horsepower up even further to over 600, I believe.
Well, I think there was a little engine kit that came out during the winter time which Cosmo has developed for the engine, and I think they're conservatively saying somewhere around about 620 horsepower, which I tell you is absolutely remarkable. This engine has gone from 400 horsepower to 620 horsepower, and unquestionably it's the most successful engine in the history of Formula 1 Grand Prix racing. And this man, Jean Alesi, is making use of every single one of those 620 horsepower, and look how close he's going to the wall. I mean, normally on a corner like that you might leave 3 to 6 inches of room between yourself and the wall. I think he's leaving millimeters.
Jean Alesi, street racing exponent. He won the Birmingham Super Prix last year, in Formula 3000 last year. In fact, he had a career which combined Formula 1 and Formula 3000. And what's this here?
Derek Warwick, his race is over as well, I think. Looks like he's pulling off.
Yes.
Another very well. I think he's got a damage to the left front because the right front of the car looked like it was almost up in the air.
Well, it's great to see a Tyrrell back in the lead of a Grand Prix. It's been many years since we've seen that. The last victory, of course, by a Ford Cosworth engine was in 1983 by Michele Alboreto in a Tyrrell.
Yes, it was.
At Detroit. So maybe this is history revisited. Look at that gap now. It's lengthened to 5 seconds. Just a fraction over 5 seconds. There's the second place man, Gerhard Berger. The big question, John, is that the Tyrrell is on Pirelli tyres. Is he on a very soft tyre that means he's going to have to make a pit stop? Because we know he used them in the morning warm-up.
Well, I think Lacey has opted for, in fact, the very softest of the Pirelli tyres available to him, and that's why he's been so dominant in these early laps.
Ayrton Senna now in third place. Senna on the big charge. Senna 2.5 seconds behind Gerhard Berger. He has put De Chesruth behind him. Piquet is fifth, Boutsen sixth, Martini is in seventh, Prost is now eighth, Modena ninth, Nakajima 10th, Eric Bernard is 11th, Royard 12th, Nigel Mansell now in 13th spot. This is lap number 8.
And remember, Riccardo Patrese, the car behind De Chesruth, is a lap down in the race. He had a pit stop after that first lap shunt where he knocked in. De Chesruth almost touching the wall coming out of the corner. But Patrese, of course, is a lap down. And all he's doing is just trying to make up the time that he lost during that early first lap incident. But his position in the race is very much lower.
So there's a move.
He's just making up places. He's not really doing anything significant at this point in the race.
But that could be important later in the race because only 9 finishes last year. And so much can happen in a street race of this nature. So if Riccardo Patrese is very happy with his car now, he's got to keep pushing. Lacey now 5.074 seconds the gap at the end of lap number 8. Senna has closed the gap on Gerhard Berger. And De Chesruth now 15 seconds behind Senna. Fastest lap of the race so far. Ayrton Senna 1 minute 32.305.
Oh! And Nelson Piquet almost lost his front corner, his nose and the wings. He had a look down the inside of Andrea, but Andrea did not want to concede. And really, Nelson wasn't quite far enough up against somebody like Andrea to ensure he had the corner. But certainly, Piquet's motor. Oh, and McLaren, Gerhard Berger is out of the race. He's in the tyre wall. He looks like he's had a spin, or is he? He's still trying to get the.
Well, he's putting his arms in. I don't think he can restart the motor, can he?
He may well have lost his engine and therefore he'll not be able to continue. But that's a very unusual and very strange situation for Berger to find himself in at this stage in the race.
John, just explain about starter motors on Formula 1 cars, because in the old days when the first Cosworths came out, they actually had an old-fashioned electric starter like a normal road car. It's very different these days.
Today, Grand Prix cars do not carry an onboard starter. They start in the pits by a remote starter operated by compressed air, so it's up to the driver to keep the engine running at all times. And of course, if you have a spin or an incident like this, you lose the engine stops. In effect, your race is over and you're out of it. And here's Berger. Yes, he just lost the car. Oh, and he hit it fairly hard. Right rear corner, right front corner. So Berger's race going from the lead after 9 laps, he's out of it, and that's a great shame.
Basically, he just put the pedal to the metal too early.
He may have tried just to lean that little bit too hard on the car, too hard on the tyres at that point in the race. He may just have caught a little bit of dust that was on the outside of the corner, enough just to drag the car into the tyre wall. But this man so far, Jean Alesi in the Tyrrell, is just galloping away. He's got an 8-second lead right now on Ayrton Senna, and that's a monster lead. I mean, I didn't anticipate Alesi could have kept up this pace, even though we are only into 1/7 race distance. He's just going away and away.
Quick lap now from Alain Prost, his quickest lap so far. He's doing a 1 minute 34.4. But Jean Alesi, his parents come from Sicily, but he was born in France, and there is Ayrton Senna. Well, the number 1 driver in Grand Prix racing, perhaps chasing the number 1 driver of the future, John Watson.
And I don't think he's going to be, he's not going to have to wait too long into the future. I think what we're seeing from Jean Alesi is really absolutely wonderful. He is a young guy and he seems to have such maturity and a young head, and what he's done to Tyrrell, how he's lifted the team just in himself, plus all the other elements that have gone into the rejuvenated team for 1990. He, I think, is ultimately the key element of that rejuvenating package.
Yes, John, let's see another of the discoveries from fellow Irishman Eddie Jordan. Eddie was telling me in the pits the other day that over a third of the field has actually driven for him at one time or another.
Well, Eddie is a great entrepreneur, and he brought along John O'Lacey. Had a pretty awful year in 1988, took him into his team for 89. He won the Formula 3000 championship, and also his teammate his teammate Martin Donnelly, of course, won many other races as well. And in Eddie's opinion, there's no difference in speed between Martin Donnelly and John O'Lacey, so let's look forward to great things from Martin Donnelly in the future as well.
Difference in speed today, though, because Martin Donnelly was unable to start the race. The Lotus team could not fire up the Lamborghini engine. He was pushed off the grid, so only 25 starters. John, I was going to say, if our director stayed on that shot, I'd like you to take us through the gear changes. Let's wait till we get that in-car shot back for that situation. There we are,
yep. Right, he's into fourth gear, back into third gear.
All the corners are basically third gear or second gear, aren't they?
Yes, these are really slow corners. Of course, as I say, this type of corner can encourage overtaking. But to get yourself into that position requires a lot of planning, a lot of thought, and you may have to work 3 or 4 laps to find the one part of the track where, in the case of Piquet, he will get the opportunity to get past Thierry Boutsen, but so far he hasn't yet found that.
So, a recap on the positions. Jean Alesi it is who leads from Ayrton Senna, and Ayrton Senna is starting to close the gap. The gap now 7.86 seconds between Alesi and Senna.
Watching Jean Alesi's car in these corners, these slow corners, you can start to see that the rear end of the car, the rear wheels, are beginning to break away, and that is maybe an indication that the tyre performance has already peaked and has gone beyond the peak of performance. And now, once Ayrton Senna starts to that relentless reduction in the time between the two cars, I would say that John Alesi may well be looking for a pit stop within the next 5 or 8 laps to put on another set of those Pirelli tyres. But so far, what he has done has been absolutely stunning.
Moreno there, already been lapped. Let's recap on the positions. After 11 laps, Jean Alesi leads. Second, Ayrton Senna. Third is Andrea de Cesaris. Fourth, Nelson Piquet. Nice to see him up in the top 6 again. Fifth, Thierry Boutsen. Sixth, it's Alain Prost. Seventh, Pierluigi Martini. Then in 8th place, Stefano Modena. Ninth, Satoru Nakajima. And in 10th place, the Lola Lamborghini of Eric Bernard. Behind him, Nigel Mansell, and following Nigel Mansell, Oliver Griard.
This time Boutsen is having another look at Nelson Piquet. He seemed to be close enough, but not really.
Gerhard Berger has got his car back to the pits. You're back live at Phoenix. This is Andrew Merritt and John Watson here at trackside, where Jean Alesi is being hauled in by Ayrton Senna. Andrea de Cesaris is still third. Nelson Piquet is fourth. Thierry Boutsen fifth. And Alain Prost, there you see him now, is in 6th spot. John, your thoughts so far?
Well, we're watching a really good race with Andrea de Cesaris. And Thierry Boutsen now, I think, is going to make it past Nelson Piquet. But Piquet, oh no! My goodness, Nelson Piquet really is driving like a racing driver again. We haven't seen this in him for such a long time. Thierry Boutsen's had about 3 or 4 looks down the inside, down Jefferson, but not yet made it.
Don't know, John, if Senna's got a little problem, but the gap has widened to 9 seconds. At the end of lap 13, it was 9.115 seconds between Alesi and Senna. Alesi lapping in 1 minute 32.5 seconds. Senna in 1:33.7. Cesaris third, Piquet fourth, Boutsen fifth. Then it's Alain Prost. Prost putting in a quicker lap, 1:33.396, his quickest lap so far. Then it's Martini, Modena and Nakajima. Nigel Mansell seems to be making steady progress up the field, though.
Well, he's in 11th. Nigel Mansell running in 11th place currently. I would have thought he might have been making a little bit quicker progress than he is, but of course he's bogged down right now in the middle of a group of cars, and probably they're not looking in the rear view mirrors, they're looking forward. So maybe Mansell is struggling a little bit more than he anticipated himself.
Again, we see the smoke screen behind the Prost Ferrari, the 7-speed gearbox semi-automatic. Big increase in power from Ferrari this year. Nigel Mansell did say to me a couple of days ago that when he first drove the Ferrari, he thought it had no more power than the Jug that he'd driven, of course, at Williams. They've obviously improved that situation now. That's not to discredit John Judd and the excellent job he's done as a small independent company building the race engines for teams like March and several others who use Judd's, Brabham and Eurosport. Lap 14 and the gap now between Alessi and Senna, 9.293 seconds. There's Thierry Boutsen. Working away at the steering wheel. Quite a bit of kickback, John, through the steering.
Yes, all modern day Formula One cars, they run so stiffly. The car is absolutely rigid. There's no suspension movement at all.
Gerhard Berger back on the racetrack after that pit stop. Obviously not too much damage on the car.
I think Berger's actually has caused a big problem for Boutsen, allowing Prost to get through. That really was rather, oh my goodness, Berger, what are you doing? You've got two mirrors, use them.
There's some good flagging there from the corner workers from the SCCA.
But the big loser has been Boutsen. He's lost a place. He had been attacking Piquet. Prost has got through. And I have to say, from Gerhard Berger, that was really rather poor driving. He should have allowed those four cars who were racing for position to get through. Even if he had to pull over to the side of the track and stop, he should have done that.
John, a quick recap on the activities we've seen earlier in the week, or yesterday. It was a very exciting Trans Am race, crash and smash race that was, won by the Finn Bob Lapalainen, his first ever victory. And let's tell you that Paul Newman, he finished 8th in his Oldsmobile. We even had a race here for tandem bikes. We've seen a display of solar cars, and we also saw a display a bit earlier today of 1970 Grand Prix cars, including the Brabham, in which I think you made your Grand Prix debut.
Yes, I did. It was a lovely looking car, BT44 Brabham, the one I drove for the Hexagon John Goldie team, and a car which I've got very fond memories of indeed.
Well, there you see one of the hotels. Has to be said that last year the Phoenix race only attracted about 25,000 spectators, but Grand Prix buzz seems to have come to the town. Looks as if the crowd is much bigger this year, maybe 50,000. And I thought this morning the race had a real buzz about it. Just behind us in the commentary position is a new car park that is being built. That car park is a free spot to view from, and that's absolutely filled with race fans who are screaming and shouting. So when we see the official attendance figures for this race, we have to remember there's an awful lot of people seeing it for free.
Yes, there are. I mean, a lot of these viewers directly behind our commentary point are in a garage block that's in the process of being built, so they've all piled in there. They're getting a free view. So I hope the Phoenix Grand Prix, its second race in its Formula One history, will be successful, and we'll look forward to coming back here in the future.
There's Ayrton Senna. The gap now 8.072 seconds. He's lapping a little quicker than Alesi. Alesi's times have definitely tailored off a little bit. Alesi's last lap 1:34. Senna lapping in the 33.1s, and De Cesare is lapping in the 33.5s. Nakajima going quite quickly. He just did a 34.5. That's his quickest lap to date.
Oh, here we go.
That
My
was
goodness.
nice.
I mean, this is great entertainment. Look at this. De Cesare's doing everything he can to retain his position from Nelson Piquet, and Nelson Piquet absolutely pumped up and charging like crazy.
Yes, and De Cesare did lock up a brake then, didn't he? He was very nearly into the wall.
But Andrea's not an easy man to pass. You see, he pulled over to the centre of the road to anticipate Piquet's move, blocking the entry to the corner, a right-hand corner here at the end of the pit straight. So Nelson was looking to go the long way round, but really there isn't room to do that. Both drivers locking up wheels, both drivers just about scrabbling through the corner.
This time,
and he's done it now. Finally, he got himself into the right position to pass De Cesare's. I think De Cesare's has been holding up this train of four cars for quite some time, and now it'll be up to Alain Prost to see if he can slide through. I think he'll manage it with a little bit more ease than Piquet did, probably because the Ferrari engine this year has got that little bit more power.
It's Nelson Piquet up to third position here in the home of Ford. They'll be happy to have an engine first and third. Piquet with the latest Ford engine, and of course Alesi with the engine which is 23 years old.
Andrew, what you're seeing now is that all the oil and the mist that's coming off the Ferrari is getting on our camera, so we're getting, imagine what Boutsen's visor must be like. He probably is really struggling now to see anything out of the visor of his helmet, let alone what we can see out of the camera, so it's a great shame. We're going to miss a great race. But Prost coming up alongside De Cesare's, and he's taken the corner. Andrea didn't have much choice in this situation, but Boutsen now going to be on the tail of De Cesare's, probably will follow through, I think. given the next long part of the circuit where he can get a run at Andrea de Cesaris's Delara Ford. But the oil smoke coming out of Prost's car is worrying, and whether that's going to enable him to finish the race, the amount that's coming out is going to be questionable. So we're going to have to keep a very close eye on Prost.
There's a very special view from a remote camera. Yes, in Grand Prix racing you're not allowed to top up the oil, of course. Still great showers of sparks. And Nelson just locking up a brake momentarily. The order after 17 laps, Jean Alesi leads by 7.1 seconds now from Ayrton Senna. Third is Nelson Piquet, 28 seconds back. Fourth is Alain Prost, followed by Andrea de Cesaris, Thierry Boutsen, Pierluigi Martini, Stefano Modena, Satoru Nakajima, Eric Bernard, Nigel Mansell, Oliver Griard, Aguri Suzuki and Gregor Wojtek. "26 minutes into this race, 17 laps run. Still that oil mist coming out of the back of Alain Prost's car. Prost running in fourth spot.
I'm quite sure if this amount of oil was coming out of a car in Indy racing, that car would have been black flag brought into the pits, because this is oops, Andrea, you had to concede. Yes, thank goodness he did too. So now de Cesaris down into 5th place, with Gerhard Berger running on his tail. Of course, Berger being 5-6 laps behind the leaders due to that spin and shunt into the tire wall.
There's Gerhard Berger, the flag of Austria on the side of his crash helmet. Most of the drivers choose crash helmet design using national colours, and there's another pass. Doesn't make any difference to the overall positions. Gerhard Berger finding a way around Cesaris. A big cloud of oil smoke coming out of de Cesaris' car now. Meanwhile, there is the leader, and there is Senna chasing after him, and the gap has closed. Senna has just put in the fastest lap of the race, 1 minute 32.178 seconds. A new lap record for this Phoenix track. Ayrton Senna, the Brazilian, the 1988 world champion, is on the charge. Ayrton Senna, that controversial Brazilian, now 6.5 seconds behind Jean Alesi. It's very interesting to see how Alesi handles this pressure, John.
I'll tell you something, Andrew. John Alesi will be no more impressed with Ayrton Senna than he would be with you or me. As far as he's concerned, he's just another racing driver, and it will be up to Ayrton Senna to make his way past this Tyrrell 4 today. Alesi is not about to concede any ground to anybody out there. He is one of the hardest chargers, and I must say, I'm impressed by him, and I think the whole Formula One pit lane is impressed by him.
Well, that gap now 5.2 seconds. Senna pushing hard. Alesi's times, he's now lapping in 1:34.16 his last lap. Senna lapping in 1:32.8, so he took 1.3 seconds off him in a lap under the Honda bridge. The Marlboro McLaren of Ayrton Senna. And just a back view of the car there. That new deflector is rather unusual, John, on the back of the latest McLaren.
Yes, I mean, it's almost, I call it a fan-like deflector in the rear of the car. Obviously, it gives the car some aerodynamic advantages. It also happens to look quite pretty, and it's also rather different from anybody else. So McLaren may well be pioneering yet further aerodynamic developments, which you may see very shortly repeated in other cars.
Now, we just saw one of the marches go through the field. They're having a very unhappy time. And Alesi just about to lap them. There's the graphic showing you the gap on the Longy monitor.
Having made such a very early charge, it's very possible that Alesi has overworked his tyres. But the cars, when they start the race, they're on full fuel tanks. They work that weight down throughout the race, but of course damage done very early in a race is a penalty in the later part of the race. I suspect Ayrton Senna has been a lot more conservative in the first 10 to 15 laps and not really tried to hurt his tyres so much, but now he's probably got more consistency and he's able to press on and lean on his tyres, and therefore that's the reason why the gap is reducing. It's now down to just literally 5 seconds. So I think about 0.2 of a second every lap is what Ayrton Senna is going to start to take out of John Alesi's lead.
Well, this is the car designed by Dr. Harvey Postlethwaite, but the engineering strength of Tyrrell really has been strengthened, hasn't it, John?
Yes, because of all the problems of Brabham's Sergio Rhineland, who designed the Brabham that's racing here today but was raced last year, has been brought into the design team, and he will be in fact designing the 1991 Tyrrell, which will have a Honda powered engine. So with Honda power, John Alesi, Pirelli tires, I think a few of the big name teams are going to have to start looking to their laurels, because this is a team really I think is going to be a major force to be reckoned with over the next number of years.
20 of the 72 laps run. Ayrton Senna is now 5.079 seconds behind Jean Alesi, and it does seem that Alesi has answered the call. Jean Alesi leads, Ayrton Senna second, Nelson Piquet third, Prost fourth, Boutsen fifth, De Cesaris sixth, seventh, eighth and ninth is Martini, Modena and Nakajima. Then it's Bernard and Nigel Mansell still out of that top 10. There's that Tyrrell, new blue and white colours. And the gap now, suddenly the gap has closed. It's down to 3.7 seconds on the 21st lap. Senna back in the 132s. Alesi down into the 134s. There's Prost still smoking. Downtown Phoenix, USA. This circuit carved out amongst streets, which is basically in the commercial area of the town. And there De Cesaris makes a pass and puts Mauricio Gugelmin a lap behind him. And the smoking Ferrari. Still unusual to see a Ferrari being chased by Minardi.
I think the Italian fans, they don't care. Ferrari, Minardi, as long as it's up there. When he slid through, Martini slid through. I think Alan Prost actually is not sliding, he's sliding backwards more than anything else. The problem that he has with this oil smoke is, I think, getting worse and worse, and we want to see Alan Prost, I imagine, coming into the pits. Look at the amount of oil and smoke coming out of the back of that car.
Yes, Stefano Modena just gone past him, and now...
Yes, and Nakajima also passing Prost, so Prost is on a trip into the pits, I suspect, at the end of this lap, and I would imagine that his race is over for the day. Another early shower, probably for Alan Prost today.
The gap now down to 2.5 seconds. Just 2.5 seconds between Alesi and Senna.
We can just see in the background, the last car in that picture is Nigel Mansell, Prost's teammate. So he's now going to make it, I think, into the top 10 at last. His car appears to be running cleanly, and Prost is almost stopping to let Mansell go through, which is a very intelligent and sensible piece of driving on the part of Alan Prost.
Well, is Prost coming in, or is he going to soldier on? That's the John Barnard designed car, the Ferrari. John, of course, now with Benetton. And Martini puts Gugelmin a lap behind him. Let's just take the top 5 as Alan Prost comes into the pits. The top 5. Jean Alesi leads. Ayrton Senna is second. Nelson Piquet is third. Thierry Boutsen fourth. And Andrea De Cesaris is in 5th place. Well, it looks as Alan Prost's race was run, John, as you said, jumped out of the car.
Yes, it's been a very unsatisfactory weekend for the Ferrari team. Mansell only running in 10th place. Prost race over, his car was really smoking from the very first lap. And a big disappointment, I think, for everybody associated with the team, having shown so strongly and so with so much potential, let's say, throughout the winter time, and to end your first race like this for Alan Prost is, I would think, a serious disappointment indeed.
Still a gaggle of cars there. 2.3 seconds now, the gap between Alesi and Senna. You're watching the Phoenix Grand Prix flag-to-flag coverage live on Eurosport. Every Grand Prix will be live on Eurosport this year. We'll also be bringing you Grand Prix weekend reports on Friday's practice and, of course, on Saturday's final qualifying. We've got some very interesting items lined up for you in the weeks to come. Of course, it's Brazil in 2 weeks' time, and then the break of something like a month before Grand Prix racing returns to Europe. Jean Alesi will be getting pit signals, John.
Andrew, he doesn't need pit signals. He can see Ayrton Senna. Oh my goodness, Alesi, what a thing to try and do. Squeeze through Olivier Grillard. Ayrton Senna now getting through. The gap, of course, is now down to a second or less, and Alesi knows that Senna is going to be passing him very, very shortly indeed. And what we want to know is, are the Tyrrell team preparing to bring him in? The pits are in fact already formed to come in to make a tyre stop, but I did see the pit board signal. Now, I can't tell what Tyrrell has put out. Tyrrell is one of the wiliest team managers in Formula 1, and although he's been elevated to the position of chairman, he really still does control the race situation, and Tyrrell will very surely know at what point it's prudent to bring Alesi in to put on another set of the Pirelli tyres, to let his hard-charging young Frenchman get back out into the race and pick up whatever points are going to be available.
Yes, Grillard stopped then, so people are going to be making tyre stops. That was a stop for fresh tyres for Oliver Grillard in the Osella. That's one of the Pirelli runners.
What?
Senna, 1.2 seconds, perhaps it's less now. Senna charging after Jean Alesi.
The little Frenchman's not going to give up, Andrew. He's going to hang on to his lead as long as he can. But I suspect that it's a diminishing position that he's in. Senna very much in control, really running in second place, but he knows that he's been able to close up to Alesi quite quickly in the last 5 or 6 laps. He knows what's happening to Alesi's Pirelli tyres. He knows that his own Goodyear tyres probably now are running at their optimum, in their optimum form, and if Alesi has to make a pit stop, well, why bother even trying to pass him? It's inevitable. He's going to take the lead. He doesn't need to put himself into a position of danger in challenging inner corner, so he may well just sit there, or if he has the opportunity he may go for it, but I suspect he'll really wait for Alesi to make the pit stop.
Yes, because Senna is 33 seconds ahead of Nelson Piquet, who's in 3rd position. Terry Boutsen 4th, just a couple of seconds behind Piquet. The gap now down, well, fractions of a second. It'll be interesting to see what sort of tactics Alesi uses. Is it possible to hold someone behind you on a circuit like this? It's quite a good overtaking place at the end of Jeffern Street, of course, at the end of the pit
of course you can always hold a car behind you, but I would have thought that the pace that these two are running at, Alesi is going to be really scratching for grip, and all Senna has to do is, if he decides that Alesi is going to be difficult, is to decide where best he can pass. He has got more horsepower, and I would imagine that basically his car has got more grip at this stage. It's a matter of deciding, does he want to do it quickly, or is he prepared to await over the next 5 or so laps, let's say to lap 30, and anticipate Alesi making a pit stop. Ayrton Senna will be getting messages from his own pits to say that the Tyrrell pit have got tyres out for Alesi, so don't worry about it. There's still 40 laps or so of the race left. Plenty of time. You'll be in the lead before the race finishes.
Nevertheless, a sensational drive by Jean Alesi, just in his 9th Grand Prix. Part-time Formula 1 driver last year, of course, made a sensational debut at his home French Grand Prix at Paul Ricard, where he finished in 4th spot. That marked him out as a man to watch.
Well, right now we've got a number of young drivers who've come through Formula 3000. Jean Alesi, obviously, Martin Donnelly, another one is Eric Bernard, and in France, Eric Bernard is rated even higher than Jean Alesi. And beyond that, there's another guy called Eric Comas who's going to be better than these two even. So there's it's a tremendous amount of young talent coming through the junior ranks, Formula 3 and 3000.
Andrea De Cesaris is out of the race.
Andrea's race is finished, yes. He's we don't know yet what his problem is. He didn't hit anything this time, it seems. It may just be a mechanical problem.
A hard-charging drive from 30-year-old Italian. Finished up like so many of his races in retirement. Alesi first, Ayrton Senna second, Nelson Piquet third, Terry Boutsen in 4th spot. Not sure what those corner workers think they're doing, standing out in front of the walls there. There's a break in the walls, but that's a very dangerous situation.
No, I don't think they should. I mean, it's I think a little disconcerting. Those walls, those gaps are meant to be there for the course workers to have access to a car if it stops. It's not meant for them to stand out and actually look down the track.
That's Adam Street. There's Roberto Moreno. Alessi Senna, Piquet, Boutsen, Martini, Modena, then Nakajima, Mansell, Bernard, Suzuki and Wojtek. Quite a good run from Gregor Wojtek, a Swiss driver, was with Eurobrun last year. The gap's actually lengthened a little bit, probably because of traffic. Alessi now 1.796 seconds. Almost 2 seconds ahead of Ayrton Senna. Roberto Moreno is actually in 20th place at this time.
Martini's race hasn't been quite as impressive as we'd thought it could have been. He was very, very promising in practice, second position on the grid, front row. And right now, Stefano Modena in the Brabham, and the Brabham team have come here really like a skeleton. There is just literally the bones of a team. They don't even have a designer engineer, because Sergio Reinland, the week before the race, was told to pack up and go to Tyrrell.
So great action here. Jean Alesi leads. We'll go to a break. Stay with us live on Eurosport. Live with the Eurosport at Phoenix, Arizona. John Watson and myself watching a fantastic race. Jean Alesi is still holding off Ayrton Senna, but there has been a change. Thierry Boutsen, who's moved up to third. Nelson Piquet is now fourth. Martini fifth, and Modena in sixth place. John, tell us about Nelson Piquet.
Nelson had a quick pit stop. I think he gave his tyres a real caning in the early laps in the race, and we did see a lot of tyre smoke coming off those tyres, so maybe they've gone out of balance. They've become so bad that he decided, prudence being the best choice, he came into the pits, had a very, very quick pit stop, left the pits, I mean, absolutely like a rocket ship, and is back out in the race and probably still running in fourth place.
You reckon that Ayrton Senna is biding his time?
I think Senna's sitting there. He knows that Alesi is right on the limit on his tyres, and although the lap times of the two drivers are very, very similar, the Goodyear teams are anticipating pit stops from the Pirelli runners. I'm sure if Senna was in a position to comfortably pass Alesi, he would do so. That doesn't appear to be the case, but his team are going to be giving the information to not do anything rash, just to sit there. We're still not anywhere near half distance on the race, and he's anticipating Alesi making a pit stop, so I suspect that McLaren's strategy is to let the situation continue as it is. Later in the race, if he's in a position to charge and pass, then he will do that.
Alessi Senna, Boutsen Piquet, Martini Modena, then it's Nakajima, Mansell and Bernard. Nigel Mansell lapping reasonably quickly in the 134s, the low 134s from Nigel Mansell, and he's closing up on Satoru Nakajima. In fact, he's just 1.5 seconds behind him now, so we could still see Nigel Mansell in the top 3 or 4. Long way to go yet. This is lap number 30.
Well, Nigel now is closing up to Nakajima, and he's got Modena and Martini just ahead of him, so really in the next number of laps he's got a very good opportunity to take maybe 3 more places, but Modena has finally gotten past Martini in the Minardi, with Nakajima closing up onto the tail of Jean-Pierre or Martini.
Pierre-Luigi, yes.
All these Pierre-Luigis and Andreas, they're getting your tongue round it is difficult.
Pierluigi Martini, he's a 28-year-old, comes from Ravenna in Italy. Made his Grand Prix debut back in 1984 in Italy. Finished 14th in last year's World Championship. Taking part in 39 World Championship races. This is his 40th.
There we are.
Well, now Ayrton Senna is right up the gearbox of Jean Alesi, and I think we could see the vital move very soon. Still a brilliant drive by Alesi. 30 laps he's led this motor race. A stunning start to the new Grand Prix season. But it's a familiar face who is now charging hard. Ayrton Senna from Brazil, 1988 world champion.
Of course, Andrew, this is what American race enthusiasts have been waiting to see in Grand Prix racing for a long time, and that is two drivers racing for the lead. It's something that we have not been accustomed to for more years than I care to remember, and to have this kind of race here in Phoenix, I think is going to be a great encouragement for the rest of the season.
John, we well remember your charges through the field at places like Long Beach, and of course the red and white McLaren. Just one thing we should mention, although you're with me in the commentary box, you haven't actually retired from racing. You've got quite a hot programme this year.
Yes, most people think I have, but that's because I'm not any longer involved in Grand Prix racing. I'm currently racing Toyota in sports car, the World Sports Car Championship, and that's a race series that has been developing over the last couple of years, and next year most of the cars will be running engines which are in effect Formula One engines, so I think it's got a bright new future ahead of it, sports car racing.
On news from Japan earlier today, a Toyota won the first round of the Sports Car Championship in Japan. A car very similar, or exactly the same, I believe, as the one you'll be racing. But now Senna really is on the charge. Had a little think about going down the inside, decided against it. Alessi leads, only just from Ayrton Senna. They are 40 seconds ahead of Thierry Boutsen now, who is 24 seconds ahead of Nelson Piquet. Modena is 5th. Mansell now is up to 6th place.
Yes, I think Nigel Mansell will be continuing his very sensible and very cautious move forward, because he took a long time to get into the top 10. Now he's gotten into it. He's gone from 10th to 6th in the space of 5 or 6 laps, and we could easily see Nigel Mansell today being on the podium.
And is this the move? No. Alessi gives him the chop.
Alessi is so late on the brakes, he leaves it to the very last moment. I mean, Senna's always a bit of a late breaker anyway, but Jean Alesi had just the advantage of being a couple of car lengths ahead, and being late in the brakes enabled him to keep the corner and keep the lead from Ayrton Senna. The amazing thing is about Alesi is that he's totally unaffected by a man like Ayrton Senna running behind him. I remember in Hungary last year he gave Nigel Mansell a major brake test coming into the pit lane because something that had occurred on the racetrack. And I thought the character of the guy was, even at that stage, developing very, very rapidly indeed.
Very pleasant young man also. Has a small flat in Oxford where he bases himself. In fact, he's been there for a couple of years. As we said, managed by Eddie Jordan, but also a lot of help from his brother.
Yes, Eddie Jordan these days, the name is being mentioned more and more frequently. He's seen currently as being a guru to all these young racing drivers, but of course Eddie Jordan is looking towards coming into Grand Prix racing himself, and he's currently laying plans down to let's say put together a Formula One team which he hopes could be in Grand Prix racing next year, and I think that would be a very, very good addition to the ranks of Grand Prix racing.
After 32 laps, Alessi, Senna, Boutsen, Piquet, Modena, Mansell, and it's very close now. Is this the move, John?
Looks like it, yes, he's got it. He managed to slid through. He came out of the corner. He got a good run. Look at Alesi diving down the inside. Oh, my goodness. My goodness, that is Jean Alesi.
Got the lead back.
What an amazing overtaking. That Ayrton Senna, I don't care who you are, because you've passed me, it doesn't stop me from having a go again.
This is
and
good.
That caught, I think, I'm just bemused by it. Ayrton Senna was absolutely taken back, and he was prepared to turn into the corner, and suddenly he saw that blue and white Tyrrell wheel to wheel with him, turning left, and he had to concede the corner.
Now he's going to try and use the traffic. Corners. Roberto Moreno lets fellow Brazilian through. The man from Avignon showing a gearbox to Ayrton Senna. That was amazing.
And I think that's the most amusing and wonderful bit of overtaking and repassing I've seen in years.
Now, of course, we've got another situation with... now he's going to have another... No, he doesn't. And now the Brabham's in front. Just see it again in replay.
A perfect shot by Senna. He did it all right. He came down the inside, timed it correctly. We're on the right part of the road. But he was on the inside and he slid a little bit wide. No, he didn't. Senna, in fact, left the door open for Alesi to go through. A very courageous move on the part of Alesi to do that. Coming up to pass Gregor Fortek. Once again, Senna's got a good chance. There we go. But he's on the inside again. And watch Alesi, but this time the gap isn't being produced, and Alesi's had to. Senna's always been very quick at picking up, but look at Alesi doing the same thing again. My goodness.
Offline now, though.
Yep, and Senna's tyres are covered in muck and dirt, having had to go offline to really block Alesi from going through. His tyres would have picked up a load of rubber and so on and so forth that's on the offline part of the racetrack, but the aggression that Alesi has, the sheer motivation and drive is absolutely stunning.
That Tyrrell obviously working extremely well and extracting the maximum from it. Jean Alesi, Gary Boutsen now 40 seconds behind these pair for the Great Phoenix Grand Prix. You must be glad you're watching it live on Eurosport. There, the Olivetti graphic just confirms that top 6. And of course Longines timing the race. Now will Ayrton Senna start to pull away. Alesi's not a man to give up.
He's not going to give up, Andrew, but I think the situation for him right now is virtually beyond his control. Once Senna's taken the lead, he's going to be able to increase that lead, I think, fairly comfortably. And of course, this question of who's made the right choice in tyre, the compound, which particular brand of tyre is going to be the better at the end of the 72 laps. One has to believe that the McLaren Senna Goodyear package is going to be there winning the race at the end of the day. But of course, Jean Alesi is one of these drivers who never says die. He is going to give 110%. Even if he has to make a pit stop, he comes in, he'll put on a fresh set of his Pirelli tyres. He will go out there and drive the wheels of that Tyrrell to pick up the maximum number of points that are going to be available to him today.
Let's not forget either that in practice, Honda had a problem with Senna's engine. Had quite a bad misfire. The new engine that they call the RA100E. Japanese like all these complicated figures. The car, if you like those sort of figures, is the MP4/5B. Just to give you some idea of the size of the major teams in Grand Prix racing, McLaren International are operating from a 67,000 square foot factory and office complex. That's in Woking, in Surrey in England, and they employ over 175 people just to put 2 cars on the grid.
I mean, if you're talking about Williams folk back in Didcot watching the Grand Prix, all those people are working to give 2 guys for 2 hours on a Sunday afternoon a racing car. And in the space of maybe 30 seconds in a race, Patrese' car already had a shunt, the nose knocked off. So when 175 people are going to be sitting back in Woking watching this, they're going to have everything they have crossed in the hope that Senna at least is going to make it to the finish of the race, and in their hopes win the race.
And of course a tremendous group of people from Honda producing the engines. That's another group of people, a lot of engineers working on that program. I know that Renault have some in the region of 100 engineers working on their engine development. Honda, I believe, have many more than that.
In fact, what we're seeing today is really the culmination of what Formula One racing is all about. Over the course of the season, they're testing the development that goes into providing these drivers with cars capable of running 2 hours is so much greater than the actual Grand Prix is these days. Research and development is such a vast part, and that's really where the budgets are being spent. The budget to go motor racing is about a quarter of the total budget these days of what a Grand Prix team needs to operate.
All these cars built from carbon fibre Kevlar weave, and that's expensive material also. It's a space-age material and much lighter than metal. And we had a little twitch there from Nigel Mansell.
Yes, Mansell trying to make up the ground that he lost in the early part of the race, getting on the power a little bit earlier than previously, and of course the rear end of the car stepped out. It looks much worse, of course, Andrew, when you're watching it on TV or watching it as we are here at the racetrack, but in the car those things you sense. Your body is so alert because of the adrenaline that's flowing. You anticipate that coming, and all you do is step off the throttle a little bit, put a little bit of opposite lock on, correct the car, and on you go. Looks much more exciting on the outside than it is actually in the car.
Senna now 2 seconds ahead of Jean Alesi. So he's not really pulling away very quickly, there's the hotel behind with the rooftop restaurant.
Yes, it's not the revolving, it's the revolting restaurant, somebody said the other day.
Saw Mark Thatcher up there last night.
He was pretty, I was going to say revolting, I mean revolving too.
Yeah, I don't think you should say things like that, John. And Mark Thatcher, of course, had quite a successful racing season the year before last with the Bugatti BMW car, but is now retired from racing. Quite a lot of big names we've seen walking around in the pits. Some of the American stars are racing, like Mario Andretti. We interviewed him yesterday. You saw Alonso Jr.
Yes,
on the grid.
Well, Alonso Jr. of course lives in Phoenix, Arizona. The Unser family are all from this part of the world, and Little Al, as he's known affectionately amongst the IndyCar drivers, was walking down the pit lane. I would like to see him considering making a move into Formula One, Andrew. I think he's a driver, one of the number of young American drivers that has got the ability and the potential to step into Formula One and really what Formula One racing needs, and especially in America, are American drivers.
The Iceberg US Grand Prix, we just saw an advertising sign for Iceberg, and if you were wondering what they actually do, they make upmarket fashion, an Italian company with a very strong outlet in the USA, so that's why they're sponsoring this race. Ayrton Senna now 2 seconds ahead of Jean Alesi, Boutsen third, Piquet fourth, then it's Modena, Mansell in sixth place, seventh Nakajima, eighth another Japanese driver, Aguri Suzuki. You haven't really given him a mention, John, and then it's Eric Bernard. So a good drive from Aguri Suzuki, only his second race. He spent all of last year in a Zach Speed Yamaha and qualified but once in his home Grand Prix, so he'll be very happy with that performance.
Yeah, he had an awful year last year, and Suzuki joined the Zach Speed team with Yamaha engines, and that was just a disaster. This year he's with the LaRousse team, of course. It's now part owned by a Japanese company, and Suzuki has been part of that sort of package. It's one of a number of Japanese sponsors that are coming into Formula One racing, and of course I expect to see a number of Japanese drivers following Suzuki and Nakajima's path into Grand Prix racing over the next coming number of years.
Senna just putting the LaRousse behind him. So it's worth recapping on that situation. We see Jean Alesi chasing after Ayrton Senna, 3.8 seconds now between the pair of them. In fact, I calculate the 4 teams are actually owned by Japanese companies. The new association between Middlebridge and Brabham. There's the Espoo Corporation, now owns the LaRousse team. Arrows, of course, have been taken over by Footwork, and the people who started it all, Leighton House, own March. Tyrrell and Benetton also have Japanese sponsors, and of course with Canon, so do Williams. Canon being the first Japanese sponsor to enter Grand Prix racing. But Benetton have a very interesting new sponsor, John, or Topolis, and I think you know a bit about that project.
Well, they're a Japanese corporation, and they've got a major plan to build a racetrack and leisure centre in Japan. They've got something like a $500 million budget to do that, and right now the Japanese and drivers, teams, engine manufacturers are making a very big move into Grand Prix racing. They're doing it, in fact, outside of motor racing and other forms of commerce, but certainly Grand Prix racing is seeing the benefit of Japanese money coming into it, and I wonder how long it is before we really can see a Formula One Japanese driver in a team like McLaren, a front-running team, and winning Grand Prix and ultimately maybe winning a World Championship.
I think that has to be possible in the 1990s. Folks getting a good view from up there, looking down on Ayrton Senna. There is Senna, now 4.3 seconds ahead of Jean Alesi. Thierry Boutsen another 37.5 seconds back. Piquet still in fourth place, then it's Modena. He hasn't been lapped yet. So halfway through this race we saw the positions change. Ayrton Senna took the lead. Stay with us on Eurosport for more great action live. You're back live at Phoenix, and there is a big shunt. John Watson, what's happened?
Well, we've got one of the 2 Brabhams. We can't decide whether it's Stefano Modena or Gregor Wojtek, but obviously it's hit the wall very, very hard indeed. The car is stuck in the middle of the racetrack. Race marshals are running to it. That's Gregor Wojtek. We can just see the red on the top of his helmet. Obviously something is broken on the car, I would say, because on the straight part of the track you don't have accidents, so something has gone wrong for Wojtek. The car has spun, hit the wall very, very hard. He's probably been knocked about a little bit, probably bruised and winded, but he's walking away from the car. He appears to be okay, but that may well mean we have to have a yellow flag situation, certainly with the amount of rubbish on the track from bodywork and bits of metal. it's going to mean that this part of the circuit's going to be slowed down.
Fortunately, the car is offline, but the marshals seem to be walking away from it. I have to say that in America, the corner workers, as they call them, I don't feel have the experience of the British marshals. I feel that British marshals would have been able to get that car back against the wall.
Well, one of the things, of course, is that these American street tracks, there's nowhere to put a car, and probably there's no crane anywhere convenient to this particular car to move it. And to get that car moved offline is going to take about 6 people to physically shove it out of the way.
Why don't they get 6 people to do it? They do it in Britain.
Well, what they have to do in America, and something I don't think is a very good idea, is put onto the track what they call a wrecker, a tow truck, put a tow line to the car and pull it out of the way quickly. But of course, putting one of those trucks out on the circuit adds additional dangers to everybody else who's out there. The best thing for a solution like this is to have a yellow flag, a pace car, where it goes out, picks up the leader, and then everybody else has to fall into line behind the leader, and that enables the safety workers to get that car out of the way and therefore enable the race to continue in total safety. But I think we've just seen Nigel Mansell's Ferrari pulling off the side of the track. We just got a very quick glimpse of a car on the main straight pulling off, and I think it may have been Nigel Mansell.
Oliver Griard in trouble.
He's just come out of the pits. He had a pit stop for tyres, and he's obviously going very slowly. Maybe it was Griard we saw. The two cars looked similar. Yes, it could have been Griard's car that was in fact stopped at the side of the track. Something's wrong with his car. He's going very slowly. He has just come out of the pits, so maybe the problem was not Nigel Mansell but Olivier Griard.
Lap 43 of the 72.
Griard's right front wheel has been damaged. He's hit the wall, and I think that's the reason why he's going slowly.
You can see the bent suspension arm there. Senna leads by 7.8 seconds now from Jean Alesi. Back in third place, Thierry Boutsen, 38 seconds behind Thierry Boutsen. Yes, you can see that car crabbing.
Yeah, the upper,
fourth,
the right-hand side.
Sorry, John. Fourth, Nelson Piquet. Fifth, Modena. Sixth, Nigel Mansell. And there we have a pit stop from the Benetton team. That's Alessandro Nannini. Fresh good years for Nannini. Some adjustments at the front also.
Yes, it's a slow pit stop. They're doing something on the left-hand side of the car. It looks like they're trying to adjust something either at the back of the wing or the spring and shock absorber, which are mounted just inside the front of the chassis there. But now they're going to take the nose off the car.
Senna now really increasing that lead. It's widened to 9.039 seconds. 9 seconds between Senna and Alesi. An unusual looking shape of the Benetton. Those great big side pods. Mechanics all working away, and it looks as if he's going to be back in the motor race.
Yes, it looked like the nose on the car had become dislodged, and they had a problem to try and get it relocated again. They lost a long time, probably well over a minute, that pit stop.
Action in the McLaren pit. There you see a tyre with a tyre warmer on it. John, explain that.
Well, those tyres don't necessarily have to be for Senna. They could easily be for Berger. We don't know that yet.
Gerhard Berger currently in 20th place, still running in the field. Yes, Gerhard Berger 5 laps behind.
It's fairly normal for teams to have tyres ready. They've got these tyre warmers, and the tyres will be placed in the spot or beside the spot where the car would make a pit stop. And currently the tyre warmers are still on the tyres, so they're not anticipating a pit stop in the next number of laps. If a driver wants to come in for tyres, it's up to him to call up the pits on the two-way radio and inform them of what they're doing. Even Ferraris have two-way radios, by the way, Andrew, not what we thought in Estoril last year. So the driver can talk to the pits, and he would say, I've got a tyre problem, I want to come in. Or likewise, if the team consider that the driver's lap times have dropped to a point where he's losing more time than he should do, they can advise him to come in. But the decision is generally left to the driver.
Senna leads Jean Alesi by 9.3 seconds on this, the 45th lap of the opening round of the World Championship here at Phoenix, Arizona. You're watching it live on Eurosport, the station that the Grand Prix stars watch. Ayrton Senna. And that's one of the first shots we've actually seen from that camera car. That's Michele Alboreto in the footwork arrows.
He's having a fairly lonely race, I would say. There's not too much ahead of him, and I don't see very much behind him either.
Alboreto down in 12th position, 1 lap behind. There you see the car, the Footwork Company. Corporation started with a major delivery service in Japan, and in fact send out a lot of gift-wrapped presents to deliver them, and that's what the car's logo is. So you actually see the red stripes, so it's supposed to be a ribbon which is wrapped around a parcel, and at one side of the car it's actually got a bow.
Yes, I mean, I suppose some people would say if they got a parcel like that, they would say, return to sender.
Also, the logo of the car is the logo of Footwork, which is on all their vans, is a Dachshund, and they've come up with some very jokey stickers with the Dachshund with a crash helmet on, and here they've got a special one, the Dachshund with a cowboy hat on. This little Dachshund caricature is infiltrating Grand Prix racing. A lot of drivers might say they've driven old dogs before. They've never driven a car with a picture of a dog on it. That's what Alboreto's doing. So there's a bit of useless information.
Well, the Footworks Arrows team currently are running a development of their last year's car, and it really wasn't a front-running car last year, and this year isn't following that, or is following that trend. But of course, the big news for Footwork Arrows is that they've got the Porsche engine, and they're going to start developing that for the 1991 season.
Nigel Mansell there making a pass on Stefano Modena,
yes,
I think, and moving up a spot.
Indeed he is, and I still believe we can see Nigel Mansell being on the podium in the top 3 before the end of this 72-lap race.
A lot of oil on the helmet of Stefano Modena. I think a lot of that he got from Alan Prost.
If Modena's got himself rather caught behind Roberto Moreno in the Europe run. Mansell sprinting away from him very rapidly indeed.
Still 20 cars still running in this race, and the man who is last is actually the man who set the fastest lap. Gerhard Berger on lap 34 did a 1 minute 31.0. Lap 46 the order: Senna, Alesi Boutsen, then Piquet. Senna, Alesi, Boutsen, Piquet, Mansell, Modena. That's the top 6. Nakajima, Suzuki, Bernard and Martini round out the top 10. "11 seconds now between Senna and Alesi.
Still no sign of Alesi's Tyrrell team bringing him in. They've got the tyres ready for him if he wishes to come in, but they've still got the tyre warmers on them, so maybe they're confident that Alesi's position is now stable enough for him to retain his second position. A pit stop at this stage may end up having him lose more than just second spot, so they're going to be advising him to consolidate. He's got something like 30 seconds of a lead on Thierry Boutsen, so why bother? Just take it easy. You got second place. That's a pretty good start to the season.
Yes, in fact, the difference is 40 seconds now. Interesting to see Nannini's just put in his fastest lap of the race. That's because he's on fresh tyres, John.
Fresh tyres, and he had an adjustment to the front wing. So, of course, when your tyres are nice and fresh and the car is down in sort of half tanks and you're in the groove as well, it's quite often that we see fast laps suddenly coming over the next 3 or 4 laps when the tyres are still fresh, and at their peak of performance, that's the time you get these quick laps. But this man Ayrton Senna is just under 1 minute 32.8, so his tyres are still in reasonably good shape, and of course he's constantly pulling away from second place man Jean Alesi. 47 laps run. Senna leads. So Alesi, Senna the only man that's lapping in the 132s. Alesi here now lapping in the 134s. Just about a minute and a half lap here around the streets of Phoenix. This city actually spreads over a very wide area. This is very much the commercial area where the bank, the odd hotel and so on. It's almost like a ghost town on Friday, John. There wasn't on Thursday. It was very weird. It was a very strange sensation because the street races normally were associated being in the middle of a town. Monte Carlo, of course, is in the heart of Monaco. But in Phoenix, all the residential areas spread out miles and miles from where we are today, right in the heart of the commercial area of Phoenix. And on Thursday and Friday, it was deserted.
In fact, some of the shopkeepers have been sounding off to the local newspapers. As I said in the opening, this is the 9th largest city in the United States. Phoenix was actually called Pumpkinville, believe it or not. Phoenix was rebuilt on this old Indian site about 150 years ago. Well, I believe it was only about 70 years ago when they changed the name from Pumpkinville to Phoenix.
Well, having said all that, there's beginning to see this merest hint of breathing from the back of Mansell's, not a Phoenix jet, this is from the back of...
Hint, you mean the merest hint?
Merest hint of smoke appearing from the rear of Nigel Mansell's Ferrari, somewhat similar to what we saw from Alan Prost's car much more early in the race. So let's keep an eye on Nigel Mansell and hope that that problem doesn't deteriorate for all those Ferrari fans back in Europe watching Eurosport this afternoon.
Nelson Piquet with Nigel Mansell after him now.
That telltale whiff of smoke is there, but of course Nigel will drive the car till it grinds to a halt, and with having got Nelson Piquet now in his sights, of course that's the greatest inspiration a driver can have, and that's to see the car you're trying to challenge and attack go gradually getting closer to you.
So still a good battle for 4th, 5th and 6th. Piquet, Mansell and Modena. This is the 49th lap. This race is going to go fairly close to the 2 hours. Nigel Mansell bases himself at Port Erin in the Isle of Man.
Yes, he just slipped past fellow Brazilian Mauricio Guzman in the very unpleasant handling March. I don't know what March have done wrong. They did a brilliant job in 88 and 89, and so far in 1990 it's been a disaster.
Many of the teams, John, not really running their 1990 cars yet.
Well, the car they've got is a development of the 89 car. It's not entirely a new car, but of course everybody has had to do a modification because of the regulations regarding the driver's foot box and other alterations. So it's in effect a fairly new car, but obviously the development time over the winter time has not caused any great improvement in the performance in the March, and I must say it's very disappointing that Adrian Newey heading the design team at March. He is, in my view, one of the leading up and coming brand of new young designers, so I would expect to see really a lot more from March, and I'm disappointed that they haven't made that leap forward over the winter time I had hoped for.
Quick word about the people that didn't make it into the race. 35 people came to Phoenix to race, only 26 made it. The two AGSs rather surprisingly didn't make it, to Gabriel Tarquini and Yannick Dalmas, and that must be a very big disappointment for their new sponsor, the big Paris fashion house, Ted Lapidus. The Life didn't make it through pre-qualifying. That's the Italian car which Gary Brabham was going to drive, and the man they call the Panda, Claudio Langes, in the Europe run, he didn't make it through pre-qualifying either. Neither did Bernard Gachot in the Coloni Subaru. Gianni Morbidelli crashed out of the action in his Dallara, so he didn't get to run. Neither of the Onyx cars made it.
Something's blown up in the back of the Ferrari. Looks like the gearbox or something may have seized. There was flames. You can just see a little bit of flame coming from the back of the Ferrari. Mansell suddenly went out of control, coming down the straight into the braking area, and the car, of course, now is retired now to the race. But whatever that was, it looks like major gearbox problem caused the back of the car to lock up and seize. There was for a moment there we can see it again, Mansell coming down the straight, driving quite normally, totally in control. This reminds me of Adelaide 4 years ago when Mansell had a rear tire go. There we go, look at that flash fire. Something in the back of the car suddenly seized, and Mansell was very fortunate to get away with that, in fact not hitting anything at all. That was completely unexpected.
Do you think that the engine actually, we saw that cloud of blue smoke first, and I think perhaps the engine seized and locked the rear wheels?
Could be. Something certainly caused the rear wheels to lock and for the car to go out of control like that, and that amount of fire, it wasn't a petrol fire, that was an oil line or something of that nature. The oil vapor just suddenly exploding, and of course the fire died out as quickly as it rose. But a very unpleasant moment for Nigel Mansell, and of course now Mansell is out of the race.
Gerhard Berger into the pits again.
Yes, he's coming in for yet another set of tyres, having charged very hard indeed on the set that he had to replace his earlier set when he had to make a pit stop. But in fact Berger's race, they're pushing his car forward, and I think Berger's race is finished. Looks like he's going to get pushed back into the garage.
Just recap the position. Senna first, Alessi second, Boots and third. Piquet is now fourth. Stefano Modena is fifth. In sixth place, now it's Nakajima. Nakajima has already been lapped. 13 seconds between this man, Ayrton Senna, and Jean Alesi. Ayrton Senna, a man who's paid several £1 million a year to race and is able to indulge himself in his own business jet, as are a number of other Grand Prix drivers, Nelson Piquet, Nigel Mansell. They've got use of business jets, as of course is the man who owns his team, Ron Dennis.
Well, it's with the amount of travelling that these drivers have to do these days, particularly the testing, it becomes such a busy schedule that to have to travel scheduled airlines actually absorbs an awful lot of working time. So they are in the very fortunate position of being able to have access to executive jets. Some of them own them, some of them buy hours, and it enables them to fly in and out of the tests very quickly, very conveniently. And of course they don't have to queue up like animals at the airport where you and I have to do that.
That's right. Ayrton Senna, of course, likes. And there's a spinner, that's Suzuki, I think.
One of the Larousse Lolas spun. I would say he's also lost his engine. Oh, he's got it going.
He's got it going.
Yep. Eric Bernard.
Yes, it was Eric
Had a little spin and he had trouble getting first gear, I think, and but he's back on the track again. The two Lola Lamborghinis in back are running side by side, and that might have been the cause. Having seen your teammate ahead of you, maybe they being slightly over anxious to try and catch up and overtake.
Yes, Eric Bernard was running in 8th place. I think he possibly lost a position there to Riccardo Patrese, who after that first lap drama has now moved up to 9th position.
And look how fortunate he was. He almost just clipped the tower wall, just at the very end of the tower wall, and Patrese's gone through.
Yep, Patrese's moved up a spot. So Riccardo Patrese's lapping in the 1:36s, Riccardo. Ayrton Senna lapping in 1:32.9. Jean Alesi now lapping much slower than Ayrton. In fact, that last lap, Alesi was 4 seconds slower than Ayrton Senna. Puts him
well, the pace that this race is being run at, and the pace that Jean Alesi has run the entire race at when he was leading and following in Ayrton Senna's wheel tracks, I'm not surprised.
Still, great effort to lead the first 34 laps. Remember, on the 33rd lap, Ayrton Senna got past for one corner and had that sensational move where Jean Alesi put it back across him. So tremendous racing here at Phoenix, but now a very familiar sight for Marlboro McLaren, forging out ahead with Ayrton Senna at the wheel. Team McLaren have won 80 races in their history. Several of them with John Watson at the wheel.
Yes, well, I can claim to have had 4 of my victories with McLaren, and at that time it was a contribution, but of course the number of races that have fallen to McLaren over the last 6 years, my 4 fall into insignificance, but to me they're important.
Keep polishing the trophies, John. Senna Alesi, the gap now 18.8 seconds. There's Alesi. Car diving about a fair bit. Perhaps it's worth a recap all the way down the field. First Senna, second Alesi, third Boots and fourth Piquet, fifth Modena, sixth Nakajima, seventh Suzuki, 8th Patrese, 9th Martini, that's a big disappointment. 10th after that spin, Eric Bernard. 11th in the Arrows, Alboreto. 12th Nannini. 13th is Paolo Barilla, we hardly mentioned him. 14th Bernd Schneider. Nigel Mansell has shown 15th, he's obviously out of the race. Then it's Gugelman, Moreno and Berger. Jerry Boutsen 33 seconds behind Jean Alesi. Just wondering if there's a chance of that Williams having a bit of a late charge for second place. This is Nelson Piquet. Jerry Boutsen's pulled well away from Nelson Piquet. Just looking out for the pit board to see what they're showing him. Yes, 32 seconds down on Boutsen is Piquet. But Stefano Modena is now just 2.6 seconds behind Nelson. There he is. Modena, another hard charger from Formula 3000 from a couple of years ago, another winner of the Birmingham Super Prix. It's a fine street circuit. quite a reputation built up about Stefano Modena, and Stefano Modena, he's apparently got a number of superstitions. There's nothing new about that. Alan Jones used to race in blue underpants, I remember. Modena likes to climb in one side of the car only, and they do say he only wears one of these gloves inside out, but somebody told me that was actually a myth.
I think at one stage he did do that. He's, let's say, he doesn't follow the pattern of normal, or not of normal, but of Grand Prix drivers. Maybe he's normal and everybody else is somewhat odd. But I know that he likes his bed in the room to point a particular direction, and he's got a few things that maybe give him comfort. And if those don't fall into the regular pattern, then he's not maybe quite as happy with his lot on a given weekend. But he's done a good job here, and bearing in mind that the Brabham team only realised they were coming out here a couple of days before practice began, and the fact that the team are here, literally the bones of a team, that's a great credit to the Brabham team and to Modena that they're running right now in the top 6.
Very interestingly, the Middlebridge company, which has bought Brabham, also have a Formula 3000 team that this year will be running Damon Hill and David Brabham. David Brabham's a fine runner, but that is Suzuki, I think, John?
Yes, I think it is. Seguro Suzuki has come to a halt now, so suddenly the field is becoming decimated. Yes, decimated is the word.
That's interesting. Behind there is a Greyhound bus garage, and they're actually on strike at the moment. Big stories on the news here about the Greyhound workers. In fact, they put some new drivers in, and that's one of the biggest news stories out here in America at the moment. Well, I don't know what's going to happen with there. They're just having a discussion. Can't really tell if that's a spin or mechanical.
Tracy Martini.
Lap 56. Nakajima just put in his fastest lap so far. In fact, he's lapping down in the 132s. 132.896 for Nakajima. That's a very good time indeed.
Yes, in fact, it's a lap that's almost a second quicker than his teammate John Lacey has managed on the last lap. So Nakajima, who starred brilliantly in the last Grand Prix of the year in Adelaide, when it was absolutely tipping it down, is seeming he's maybe found a team in which he can actually feel at home and actually begin to develop an ability and justify his existence in Grand Prix racing.
Yes, a lot of cutting comments about Satoru, of course, over the years. And he had a fine career in Japanese racing, totally dominated their Formula 3000 racing, but found it a little difficult to adapt to Formula 1. But really doing well. In fact, I believe he's the oldest driver in Grand Prix racing now. Sure. 37 years old. The actual spread of ages this year is not nearly so wide as in the past. In America, of course, you've got Mario Andretti still racing at 50.
And he races like a 20-year-old. He's got the spirit and the attitude of racing of guys half his age. Amazing man.
Of course, in days gone by, we've had teenagers racing. People like Bruce McLaren, because some of you may remember Mike Blackwell. Mike now retired, sadly, but his sister Lisa is racing in touring cars in Britain. I think he was the youngest man ever to drive in a Grand Prix. Bruce McLaren was definitely the youngest man ever to win one. But the youngest man on this grid, 24 years old. There we see Pier Luigi Martini. This is lap 57. 20 seconds between Ayrton Senna and Jean Alesi. Gary Boutsen in third place, 35 seconds in arrears of Alesi. Well, that's the battle between Patrese and Martini. Martini is lying in 7th place. So here in Phoenix, it's Ayrton Senna who is leading. Please stay with us for the final parts of the action from Phoenix, Arizona. Stay with Eurosport. We're back at Phoenix live. The result, the position, Senna leads, Alesi second, Boutsen third, Piquet's in 4th place, Stefano Modena, he's 5th. Nakajima of Japan is 6th. There is Ayrton Senna. John Watson, any way this man can be beaten now? This is lap number 59 of the 72. The race has been running an hour and 32 minutes. Senna 23 seconds ahead of Alessi. Can he be beaten?
I think the only way he'll be beaten is if something mechanical fails on his car. He's got the race totally under control. The team are giving him the instructions as to how he has to run the race. His tyres are obviously in very good nick. We can see there's no dark lines in the tyre which indicate the tyre would be giving problems. And really all he has to do is maintain his concentration, and he'll be there at the finish, taking his 21st victory of his very relatively short but stunning Grand Prix career.
Yes, of the current drivers, he lies in second place in victories. Of course, Alain Prost has got 39 under his belt. Piquet's 120, Senna's 120, Mansell's 115, Alboreto 5, Berger, he's won 5 also, Boutsen 2, Patrese 2, and Nannini 1. Eric Bernard putting in some fast lappery at the moment, just recorded his fastest lap of the race so far. Stefano Modena, 1.5 seconds behind Nelson Piquet. All out on his own now, Ayrton Senna. In a couple of weeks' time, Ayrton will be racing at the Interlagos track in a car for the first time in his native Brazil. Comes from Sao Paulo, but after a successful career in karting as a teenager, he moved to Britain to develop his racing talent, John.
Well, Great Britain is the home of motor racing, and certainly in terms for young drivers, they all come to Europe, come to Britain to go through Formula 4, then Formula 3, and then beyond that into 3000. So England really is the home, I consider, for any young racing driver who seriously considers a career in top-line motor racing. But the thing about Interlagos that's going to be fascinating is that the racetrack that I raced on in 1980 is not the racetrack that we're going to see in 2 weeks' time. They've shortened the track, they've altered it considerably, partly to do with safety, but also because the old track was almost 5 miles in length, and that in today's terms is almost twice as long as a Grand Prix track needs to be. But even in spite of all those changes, I think we're going to see a wonderful racetrack. And of course the Brazilian crowd are going to be there supporting, well, Ayrton Senna being Brazilian, Piquet, Gugelmin and Roberto Moreno. Let us not forget Moreno, because he pre-qualified and qualified for the race. So there could be 4 Brazilian drivers racing in the Brazil Grand Prix in 2 weeks' time.
Very interesting to reflect that Ayrton Senna very nearly gave up racing after his first year in Britain. He won the both the RAC and Townsend Torreson Formula Ford championships that year in 81, won the Formula Ford Festival, went back to Brazil and had a lot of trouble getting sponsorship, and it seemed that he wasn't actually going to return to Britain. He was talking about giving up full-size racing, actually going back to karting. He never won the karting World Championship, of course. The following year he did in fact return, won the Formula Ford 2000 Championship, both the British and the European Series, and then the next year, 83, he won the British Formula 3 Championship. So every championship he did, he just effectively walked it. I think it still rankles with him a little bit that he didn't actually win the World Karting Championship. I believe he came second on 2 occasions. Well, I think he's done enough in his Grand Prix career and all the other formula he's raced in to cover for that one. You can't win everything. I mean, I'm sure Ayrton, knowing him as I do, he's an extremely competitive guy, but when you're 14 or 15 or 16, it's somewhat different to being 28, 29 as he is today. After all that acrimony of the winter, it's been nice to have a race meeting here where there's been very little controversy, really. The only controversial incident has involved Philippe Alliot and his Ligier. Perhaps you just take us through that story, John. Well, Alliot was doing something he's fairly used to doing, and that's bashing into walls. I mean, the guy is extremely quick, and when he doesn't make mistakes, could be a very impressive driver, but for some reason he seems to fall off regularly. On his second falling off, a team personnel or guest of the team somehow or other got involved with the course marshals in the removing of the car from the racetrack, and of course that's totally forbidden to the extent that if you do it, your car and driver are excluded from the event. And of course, poor Philippe Alliot, having bent 2 cars, found himself excluded from the race because one of the team members or team guests had interfered and infringed the regulations, and therefore his weekend was over. That was very lucky for Ivan Capelli. It's led him into the race because he had failed to qualify. So everybody moved up one, and then the rains of Saturday came. and nobody was able to improve. There we see Senna now cutting 1 minute 34 second laps. John Alessi is back down in the 1:33s. Senna, Alessi, Boutsen, Piquet, Modena, Nakajima, Martini, Patrese. Patrese possibly going to challenge Martini pretty quickly. Quite a bit of oil on the back of that rear wing.
There's been a lot of oil out there today. A number of cars, I think, have been chucking it out. We saw it of Alan Prost's car, but I suspect a lot of other cars were sort of emptying their catch tanks, and you get a very fine mist, really. It's not like gallons of oil gush out of the car. It's a very fine vapor or mist, but of course, if it sticks to the car, and all the road dust and tyre rubber also sticks to the car, it makes it look a lot worse than it is. But of course, getting on the car doesn't matter. It's when it gets onto your helmet and visor.
Man there you saw who designed this car, Neil Oakley, in the pits. He was the ginger-headed one with the moustache. John, what about the physical side of this race? It's now been running 1 hour 40 minutes. What about the tiredness, the physical strength that it's taken to drive on these Grand Prix cars with the extra G-loads we're seeing this year?
Well, first of all, it's a street race, and ordinarily the drivers go to a normal racetrack and they get the racing muscles get gradually built up. But in a street race, it's quite different. And although the G-forces themselves are not so high because the grip on this kind of surface is very, very low indeed, but it's just a hard physical grind. And I would imagine not so much of the case of Alesi or Senna, because their cars are obviously working very well, so they're in harmony with the driver. But maybe the guys down the back of the field, the Gugelmans and the Snyders and Alboretos, they're having to fight with their car every inch of the way, and I'm sure they're going to be very happy really when this race is over. They're not going to get anything to reward them for the effort. That only goes to the first three drivers. I normally prefer to see the season start with a regular race rather than the street race, but of course we've had a great race here. We've had lots of excitement, a fabulous first third of the race with Alesi and Senna battling for the lead. All in all, a pretty good start to the season.
Yeah, in fact it wasn't until just 2 laps before halfway that Alesi finally had to cede that first position to the great Ayrton Senna.
But here we've got another battle going on between an old veteran Nelson Piquet and one of the new young pretenders, Stefano Modena and the Brabham, and they've been going like this for about 20 laps now. The gap's never been more than a second or so, even though they're not in place for a top 3 finish, they're fighting for points, and points won in these early races, especially the early races outside of Europe, I've always considered to be very vital, because when you go up to Europe, then the bump and the grind of the Grand Prix season really gets underway. These races, you can pick up points here, 3rds, 4ths, even 5ths, and those are very, very important points that you can add to your tally at the end of the season. So a finish in the 4th, 5th or 6th spot here can affect the outcome of a championship.
Still some sparks coming up from the skid plates. And as you say, Nelson Piquet has his mirrors full of this man. Stefano Modena, the Brabham team must be over the moon. The new owners, Middlebridge, also. The Middlebridge people actually also make road cars, John. They produce the old Scimitar GTE, which Princess Anne drives.
Well, Andrew, I remember you used to drive one hundreds of years ago. You had a Reliant Scimitar GTE.
You've got a good memory, yes. It's an orange fiberglass beast it was too.
But one of the interesting factors with this Middlebridge takeover of the Brabham team, of course, is what engine will the Brabham have in it, either later this year or for next year. And amongst the pit lane rumours are that the Yamaha engine, which was used rather unsuccessfully last year by the Zakspeed team, could easily find its way into the back of the Brabham, either later this year or for 1991.
Yes, I was a little surprised that Yamaha didn't make more progress. Their Grand Prix motorcycles, of course, are winners. They have a very strong team for this coming season, the Marlboro Yamaha team, with Eddie Lawson, the world champion, switched from Honda. And of course you'll be able to see those races on Eurosport, 500cc bike racing. Exciting stuff. Well, this has been great value here on Eurosport. Our live flag-to-flag coverage as the cars hurtle under that Marlborough Bridge. There's Senna.
Andrew, if you're talking about the Yamaha engine and their success in motorcycling, I mean, Honda, for example, when they came into Grand Prix racing, they had a great success in motorcycle racing as well, and they applied the motorcycle engine philosophy initially to Grand Prix racing, and they realized eventually that what works in motorcycles doesn't apply to a car. Now, Yamaha may well have followed the same path Honda did initially, but I suspect that they will very, very quickly realize that what's required for a Grand Prix car is not the same as a Grand Prix motorcycle. And with a team like Brabham, with the inherent experience and knowledge that they do have, it needs a good team to develop a good engine. And Zakspeed last year really were not a team of the experience or quality to assist an engine manufacturer like Yamaha to develop their engine with the kind of pace that was necessary for it to become a strong contender.
Quite a few faces missing from the grid this year. Some old favourites been racing with us Grand Prix for many years. Eddie Cheever, who had a great finish here, 3rd place, has now gone off to kart racing. Christian Danner, who finished 4th here last year, is also no longer in Grand Prix racing, and neither is the 5th place man from last year, Johnny Herbert. Johnny now racing Formula 3000 in Japan, but is also the reserve driver for Camel Lotus. Man we saw in the paddock yesterday, Jonathan Palmer. He, of course, has also dropped out of Grand Prix racing, but he's one of the 3 test drivers that McLaren have on the strength. That was something that came out in a press conference on Thursday. McLaren, as well as using Jonathan Palmer, will use Alan McNish, the fiery young Scotsman, who I think is going to be a great hero of the future. And Ron Dennis did say they'll be using a 3rd driver if they yet failed to name. Look at that rear wing, John, absolutely covered now.
Yes, well, that's mostly come from Alan Prost Ferrari, because he was the guy that was chucking out most of the oil, and we saw from the in-car camera, in fact, we haven't had any in-car camera shots from Butchen's car. I suspect largely because the lens of the camera is totally obscured now by the oil and grime that gathered from being behind Alan Prost.
So
Nelson Piquet with Stefano Modena just overtaken Roberto Moreno in the Eurobro, and they're still battling away for their 4th and 5th spot positions.
Yeah, 1 3/4 seconds between them. It could be a bit close on that now.
Piquet is just getting the break with the traffic. He managed to get past both Modena and Maurizio Gugelmin. Funnily enough, both Brazilian drivers in the right spot of the racetrack. Modena's had to sort of struggle a little bit, but he's now got past Gugelmin and is back on the tail of Nelson Piquet.
One man must be watching this and feeling sick as a pig. Martin Brundle was with the Brabham team, had some dispute over payment with the old owners, and he could have been in the Gregor Wojtek car.
I don't know, I can't really make too much comment about that. Martin had a position and he made a decision upon that, and he's now in the Jaguar team. He's the lead driver in the Jaguar World Sports Car Championship team. And in fact, I've been saying that, we're saying it with hindsight, Andrew. Your drivers have to make decisions about their futures, and it was literally only 5 days ago that the Brabham team realized it was going to be coming here to Phoenix. They had to charter a plane, they had to fly all their stuff independently of the main transportation arrangements just to get here. So with hindsight, maybe Martin doesn't feel his decision was the right one, though I think at the time he made it, it was the right decision for him.
Little Pierre Luigi Martini in the Minardi.
That's been a big disappointment for me in the race. Martini was so impressive in qualifying and practice, starting 2nd on the grid. He had a great opportunity. In fact, the opportunity that he had was taken over by Jean Alesi in the Tyrrell. And whether they've chosen to run on different tyres or not, different compounds, I don't know. Pirelli are not quite so open about what they do, although they did tell us generally that all the cars would run on a similar compound. But maybe at the last minute one driver chose something different, so we'll only know after the race is finished which driver did choose which tyre compound. But the gap in fact between Senna and Alesi is gradually closing again, more to do with Senna dropping off the pace than Alesi catching up. At this stage in the race, the pit signals from Ron Dennis in the McLaren pit to Ayrton Senna is: you've now got 5 laps to go, you've got 19 seconds of a lead, take it easy, make sure every gear change is deliberate, don't brake late. Winning the race by a second or a minute doesn't matter, the points are still the same. So I think Ayrton Senna now is in a countdown mode to the second Grand Prix here at Phoenix, and hopefully he's going to pick up 9 points.
14 racers left in the Phoenix Grand Prix, led by Ayrton Senna, of course, and then Jean Alesi. Thierry Boutsen third, Nelson Piquet fourth, Modena fifth, Nakajima sixth. In seventh place on Martini, who we were just mentioning. Eighth is Riccardo Patrese, ninth Eric Bernard, 10th Michele Alboreto, 11th Alessandro Nannini, 12th Bernd Schneider of Germany, 13th Roberto Moreno, and in 14th place it's Mauricio Gugelmin. And there is a pit signal. What does that tell him?
Just tells him that he's 19.8 seconds ahead of Jean Alesi, and Thierry Boutsen is in third place. So basically, you're in control of the race, my son. Make sure you get the car across the flag, the 72nd lap.
The Eurobrun sliding around quite a bit.
Slightly pensive look from some of the Marlboro McLaren mechanics. These laps are as tense for them, these last 5 laps now are as tense for them as they are for anybody, and they just want the flag to fall and give that great rising cheer.
4 laps to go. You just saw the trophies they're racing for. Racing drivers have different ideas about trophies. Nicky Lauda used to give his to the local car wash. What about you, John Watson?
No, well, I never won so many that I was that philanthropic with mine. I've got all the trophies I won, but in fact Ayrton Senna will not get to keep this trophy. The trophy he wins here today will go into the collection in the McLaren Museum. They're developing or devoting a large part of the factory now to a collection of racing cars since McLaren International was formed, and part of that collection is the trophies that Nicky Lauda, well in fact some that I won, in fact I have to say I regret not having them, but I've got a few there. Nicky Lauda, Alain Prost, Ayrton Senna, anybody that drove for McLaren from 81 through to 1990, if he won a race or got a prize, it goes into the collection.
Of course, it was at Monza last year where Alain Prost threw his trophy to the crowd and incurred the wrath of Ron Dennis.
He wasn't very impressed that day, Ron.
Absolutely superb drive for Jean Alesi. Still lying second, it's going to be his best result. Thierry Boutsen in third place. Then it's Piquet, Modena, Nakajima. 3 laps to go. There's Nelson.
It's been a good day for Nelson Piquet. He's now driving again like a racing driver drives. He's attacked, he's been aggressive. He's using his maturity, which he's got lots and lots of, and his first race in the Benetton team, very important to fit into the team and create a sense of urgency that he's doing, and the support now he will get from the team, from Ford, who put in an enormous amount into this new Ford HB engine, which really is a very, very good engine. In fact, a much better engine, I would say, in terms of its horsepower than the engine that Jean Alesi has. Let's say if Jean Alesi had the new Ford engine, he may well have been in a even better position to challenge Ayrton Senna for victory here today. So an interesting situation with Benetton and this new engine.
Yes, Piquet still has a battle on his hands, of course. Just 1.7 seconds separate him from Stefano Modena. Good result for the Judd engine, nevertheless. The start-finish line.
On this penultimate lap.
So we've seen just 2 leaders in this race. Jean Alesi led the first 34 laps, and then we saw the overtaking manoeuvre with Ayrton Senna moving ahead. Now the gap 16.6 seconds between the pair of them. Ayrton Senna is now lapping in the 137s. Alesi still turning the 134s.
Yes, Ayrton Senna now is counting down and just really doing what we used to see Nicky Lauda do. Nicky Lauda would build up a lead in a race, and then as the closing laps were closing in, he would just back off and back off and back off, and really at the end of the race probably lapping 10 seconds off what the car was capable of.
Well, there were the pundits that thought that all the problems that went on at McLaren over the winter, over the battle with FISA, might damage their performance a little bit. That has not been the case.
The team, including Ayrton Senna, performed very, very well indeed. That that whole scenario over the winter time was really disgraceful, and I think this is the best testament that McLaren and Ayrton Senna can make, is to go out in the first Grand Prix of the season and win in a very convincing fashion. The challenge that he had from Jean Alesi has been extremely impressive, but I think over the course of the year the strength of the McLaren machine with Honda engines is going to be more or less unstoppable.
Has to be said that the performance of the two Williams Renaults has been a little disappointing this time, as Senna just waves Bernd Schneider past. Schneider unlapped himself. This is the last lap.
Yes, I think the Williams package right now with the Renault engine is also lacking in development, and they're going to go away down to Brazil. They may in fact find time to fit in a test session before they go to Brazil. Most of the teams may well have to go back to Europe and maybe find a couple of days somewhere to run with their test cars, hopefully to find a little bit of extra speed and reduce their lap times.
Senna then coming towards the line. Races have been lost on the very last corner. We all remember Jack Brabham crashing at Monaco. Don't think it's going to happen this time.
I remember running out of petrol in the last lap of a race in 1977 in Dijon. So the race is never finished until you take the checkered flag. Even at this stage in the race, Jean Alesi could win it.
A race is not won until it's won. There's the team there, ready to celebrate. Senna going down 3rd Street. Quick look at his mirrors. Nice close up there. This is Washington Street.
And actually, Ayrton Senna waving. There's a lot of Brazilian support here. Flags there. We can see some Brazilian flags. He even took his right hand off the steering wheel to wave to those people.
Ayrton Senna wins the Phoenix Grand Prix. First blood to Ayrton Senna. 2nd place to Jean Alesi. He has still to come to the flag. Ayrton Senna, his 21st career victory. There's Stefano Modena. Alesi has now finished 2nd, 8.6 seconds behind. Still waiting for the 3rd man to come to the line. And this is still a battle. This is Piquet. Piquet going to hold off Stefano Modena. There's Senna. Where's the 3rd place man? Waiting for Thierry Boutsen to come across the line. He has not crossed the line yet.
It's nice to see Jean Alesi. He pulled up alongside Ayrton Senna, gave him a little nod and a wave acknowledging the victory, and I think Ayrton Senna in the years to come is going to have his mirrors full. In fact, it may be the other way around.
There's Thierry Boutsen and Nannini finishing. And this is Boutsen has now finished 3rd. And this is the battle for 4th place, and it's going to go in the favour of Nelson Piquet. Nelson Piquet finishing 4th, and 5th Stefano Modena. And there the cheery wave from Ayrton Senna. Nakajima will finish 6th. Senna, the winner, 1 hour 52 minutes 32 seconds. 2nd Jean Alesi, 3rd Thierry Boutsen, 4th Nelson Piquet, 5th Stefano Modena, and in 6th place it was Nakajima. 9 World Championship points to Ayrton Senna. 7th Martini, 8th Bernard, 9th Patrese, 10th Alboreto, 11th Nannini, 12th Schneider. So here we are. That is the end of the race. And there's Jean Alesi. He's happened with 2nd place. Into the pit road. Coming up next on Eurosport will be the Brazilian Grand Prix.